In the northern part of the kingdom west, this is where Lionsgate lies. Here the bird sings outside his nest as he greets the morning sunrise. In Lionsgate, 'neath the tall fir trees, on your face feel the ocean breeze. Feel the magic that's in the air in Lionsgate the fair. To Lionsgate my thoughts return. I stop and I dream for a while of tourneys bold and fests nocturne, and ladies whose smiles beguile. In Lionsgate, 'neath the tall fir trees, on your face feel the ocean breeze. Feel the magic that's in the air in Lionsgate the fair. The forest, the trees, the folk friendly, there's naught that can compare to the enchanted land that I call my home. Call it Lionsgate the fair. To Lionsgate, 'neath the tall fir trees, on your face feel the ocean breeze. Feel the magic that's in the air in Lionsgate the fair. And now, my friends, my journey begins back to my far northern home. I turn my steps to my origins. To Lionsgate I must roam. To Lionsgate, 'neath the tall fir trees, on your face feel the ocean breeze. Feel the magic that's in the air. To Lionsgate the fair. In Lionsgate, 'neath the tall fir trees, on your face feel the ocean breeze. Feel the magic that's in the air in Lionsgate the fair.
Is now started.
Yeah. We have a red light.
All right. So now it's my turn. Dame Morweena is a longtime player of Lionsgate, receiving her Award of Arms back in 2001. She has been tablet weaving for 13 years, along with exploring other weaving forms, including the floor loom. She uses this elegant tool for making fabric pieces such as shawls, Norse aprons, hoods, etc. She is a fast and efficient weaver whose excellent and balanced products makes weaving look easy, even though it is not. In terms of ensuring the rest of us carry our truly medieval looks, weavers remain some of our most unsung heroes. Morweena received her Jambe de Lion in 2004, followed by her Étoile d'Argent for excellence in the arts and science in the Principality of Thierry in 2009. She has since gone on to become both the Baronial Arts and Science Champion in 2015 and Principality ANS Champion in 2018. She is an apprentice to Mistress Agnes Shearer. Besides her arts and science, she is a bastion of service. She was the Lionsgate Seneschal when we were made the Baron and Baroness. So that was a lot of difficult stuff to get us in shape. She became Baroness Ariana's protege before receiving her Pelican in 2019. She is a member of the Order of the Grey Goose Shaft since 2009 and has received many accolades for archery, including the Scorer of Thierry. In fact, her championship bow is now owned by my son, Rory. She is one of the more active weavers in Antir and inspires many through her colorful Facebook page, Answer Autumn Texant. I don't think I pronounced that correctly.
Let me tell you what that means.
Yes. Sure.
It's the goose that weaves.
Oh,
That's
I love it.
awesome.
Tablet weaving has been described as an almost willful pursuit of complexity. And here to unravel its secrets, the Lion's Den presents presents Dame Morweena. So without further ado, I give you my friend Morweena.
Thank you. I think you're going to have to make me the presenter so I can share my screen. And I'm hoping this will work properly this time because I tend to talk with my hands a lot. And there are going to be some things I'm going to do that I'm going to be demonstrating without any cards or any loom. So I want to have both, hopefully, the camera and my handout, which I will also put in the chat so that you can download it and peruse it to your, it's mostly just talking slides, but let me just see if I can grab it and put it in the chat so you all can open it when you would like. Where's the desktop? I also am having a problem with my glasses, so I apologize. My regular glasses, I can't see the computer. My reading glasses, I have to lean in. So
screen share is enabled.
Okay, and there is a document uploading. It's a little bit big. I apologize. I did res it down, but when you use PowerPoint or something to make a PDF, it tends to be a bit humongous. So that is what that is. So I'm going to hit share screen. And perfect. Okay. So you should, do you see a screen that says tablet weaving tips and tricks?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is a tips and tricks class on tablet weaving, specifically looking at what's called woven in patterns. There's tons of different, I shouldn't say tons, there are several different styles of tablet weaving. There's brocade, there's 3-1 twill, there's float work, all kinds of stuff. But this is focusing on what's called woven in, where the pattern is created or controlled by how the threads are woven through the, or how the threads are strung through the tablet and how you manipulate it with the turns. Pretty, one of the more basic forms of tablet weaving, but you can make some incredibly intricate designs or really simple ones, depending on what you are looking for. Oops, that should not have turned blue. So what we're gonna cover is what I call the bumpy road, how to weave smooth edges, how to handle your yarn, how to keep it happy. And also we're going to talk a little bit about yarn choices, good choices and bad choices. I'm going to go over what I call wait, where am I, which is how to keep tracks of your steps and your pattern. What to do when you're done weaving, how to finish it so it doesn't unravel, and how to wet finish it, which is really important. And some people don't do that, and it has a really bad effect if you sew it to close. And then we're going to do some basic troubleshooting as much as we can. This is easier in a workshop format. I'm going to go over some things, the most common question being, why is my pattern upside down? We've all done it, happens all the time. So the bumpy road, and why does my yarn hate me? So I just want to show this band here that you see has nice straight edges. It's made with silk, which is very soft, and it looks, I think, relatively even and straight. This is a good example of weaving. And trust me, I've done some bad examples of weaving, which I will show you as well. So one thing I see when I see people weaving is they tend to be a little rough with their yarn. So you need to be gentle with it. When you're tablet weaving, there's something called the shed, and that is the open space that have props. This open area here is your shed, and you need to open it every time you turn the cards. One thing you never want to do is saw it back and forth. You see people with their cards and they're kind of going like this back and forth to open their shed. You shouldn't do that because it actually abrades the yarn and will damage it. You want to use your hands to gently open it and then use your beater to break it open. The reason you don't want to use the cards back and forth, and I do see a lot of people doing this, is it will actually rough up the edge of the yarns and it causes them to snap. It can also play havoc on your cards. It will make the holes in your cards start to tear if they're paper. And if they're wood, it can even start to cause splitting in the card and some damage. You also want to make sure you're using the right yarn to avoid snapping, unraveling, and fuzzy. So some yarns are more prone to matting up and getting tangled than others. And if you're like me, you get your curly hair stuck in the warp and it tangles up. And so you do need to occasionally go in and walk things open, but just to be gentle with your yarn. Don't saw back and forth. It's not very, doesn't make your yarn very happy. And here is a wonderful example of going to say poor weaving technique. So I have this under yarn matters, using the right yarn for the job. This band, it says 2, but it's really just 1. These 2 yarns were not the right yarns to use, at least not together. This is alpaca and silk, and here it is. Here's the band. I still have it. It's one of my first ones, and it has a multitude of issues in it. But one thing you can see is one yarn is very smooth and one yarn is very fuzzy. So you need to use the right yarn for the job. You want to avoid fuzzy, prickly yarn, as well as yarn with low twist and yarns with a halo. So in this slide, you can see that there's some fuzz sticking off of the yarn. And what that'll do is it'll wind up blurring your pattern, and your pattern will become less distinct. If that's okay, if that's the look you want, that's fine, but it makes it less distinct. Good yarns, particularly for beginners, crochet cotton. It's cheap, it's colorful, it's very strong, it's very durable, it has a very high twist, and it's a very durable yarn, and it's a great place to start with. You can go get it at Michael's, and it's super cheap. One of the yarns I like to use, and I know Maestro Guido Baldo uses this as well, because he has it around for the same reason I do, is weaver's cotton, which is, it mentions, it's usually labeled like 2/8 or 4/8. So this band is done with weaving cotton, 2/8 weaving cotton. It's nice because it gives you a nice fine looking band without it being really massive. It's not super thick. It's great on cotton or linen garb. I wouldn't necessarily want to put this on wool, but it's great on linen. It's washable, it's durable, and it's a nice fine yarn, so you can get a detailed pattern and still have a decent sized band. You really don't want them super big. Tencel is another yarn you see people using a lot. It looks a lot like silk, but it's a lot less expensive. This band is Tencel. Tencel, it works up fairly nicely. It's a little slippy, so it can cause some tension issues, but it weaves up quite lovely, very drapey. Not as nice as silk, because nothing is as nice as silk. You can also use what I'm going to call stable knitting yarns. And what I mean by that is something like this yarn, where it doesn't have a lot of stretch. You see, I give it a pull, it doesn't stretch very far. It's nice and stable. A lot of knitting yarn is designed to stretch. So this one, you see it stretches a lot more. You can use these, but they're tricky. So you're better off using the stable one. This is cheap acrylic from Michael's. And it weaves up not too bad. This is a cheap acrylic from Michael's. It weaves up actually really lovely. The final product is beautiful, but it's a bit of a pain to work with because of the stretch. It's really hard to get your tension even. My favorite yarn to work with is silk, and I don't have an example here with me because I left it in the other room. I have a love-hate with silk because I like to use really fine yarns with silk. And oh wait, I do have an example right here on my dress. It takes forever to do because they're so fine, but the result is so pretty. It's soft and gentle, and it's nice and soft on your fingers. It's really nice to work with. You can also use a high twist linen, which I can't even explain the drape of a linen band. It's got a heavy weight and a soft drape, and there are period examples of bands woven in linen. This one, for example, is a recreation of something referred to often as the Cambridge Diamonds, which was a woad dyed band done in linen. And this is actually one of my entries from Theory Arts and Sciences a couple years ago, where I grew some woad and dyed some linen and then wove it into this band. But it makes a really nice band. It's got a unique hand for sure. Yarns to avoid: stretchy knitting yarn, which I just mentioned. Yarn with low twist like the Icelandic yarn, Lepitoki or Lopi, it doesn't have a lot of twist to it. So when you're weaving with it, it tends to sort of pull apart. It's beautiful yarn, and it's made with, Icelandic sheep. So you think, oh, they've been kind of untouched. It's kind of, a good historical type of yarn, but it just does not have a lot of twist in it. And so it can be very tricky to tablet weave with. You also want to avoid yarn with low tensile strength. Alpaca is very soft and lovely, but has a tendency to snap. So this is a yarn that I would not recommend tablet weaving with. And I know because I tried, and it snaps really, really easily, which means you'll keep breaking warp threads and you'll keep having to fixing them. And that is utterly maddening. Now, linen is actually on both lists, both the good and the bad. And the reason why linen is on the bad yarn list, it's more of an experience thing. It can be snappy if it gets too dry. So if you don't have a lot of humidity in your air, the linen sort of dries out and gets snappy. It'll tend to break, and you break your warp threads, which again is really frustrating. And if you are sawing back and forth with your cards when you're opening your shed, you are going to, pardon me, braid that linen and it's going to snap. Some people use a spray bottle to soften it, to keep it nice and supple. And then, like I said, it produces an amazing result. Does anybody have any questions on yarn types? Going once, going twice. Moving on. So, clean edges. There are two significant parts in getting these nice straight edges like you see in that red silk band. One is technique and one is technique and one is mechanics. So the best way to keep your edges nice and even is to follow this technique. Throw your weft, which means toss your weft through the shed, pull it most of the way through, and just like that little illustration, you see there's a little bubble hanging off the edge there. Turn your cards and beat, so turn your cards, which closes your shed, and then beat the weft thread in, and then pull it tight. If you follow that, always with a little bubble, and then pulling it tight, it should help you get a nice consistent edge. You want to use a consistent pull when you pull your weft in. The more you pull it in, what it'll do is actually narrows the band and it elongates your pattern. So if we go back to my terrible band, you can see there's some spots where it's not very even, where it's going woo, woo, woo. And that's because here I was pulling it really loosely and here I pulled it really tightly. You can use a ruler or a mark on a piece of paper that you slip under your band on a regular basis to check to make sure you're pulling it consistently. It's just something you have to learn from practicing. Your first bands are going to look, well, they might look better than mine, or they might look worse. Your first bands are going to have a lot of this. And as you go along, you'll get better at it and they'll become much more consistent like that. So here's 3 examples. 2 of them I think are pretty sharp. They have nice clean edges. And the third one is this poor one I keep pulling out all the time. The red and yellow one's actually done with linen. And the blue and yellow is done with the weaver's cotton. And of course, this one is alpaca and silk. Any questions so far? Going once, going twice, moving on. So the other part of keeping your edges straight has to do with your selvage cards. So these 2 bands that you see in the picture, the red one and the black and white one, are both identical pattern. And they're both 4 forward, 4 back. Really nice, easy pattern. And that means you turn the cards forward 4 times and you turn all the cards back 4 times. But if you look closely, you can see that the red band has a little bit of a wobble on the edge, whereas the black and white one has a very crisp edge. The red one, you can see the wobble is right about in the middle of the pattern. So if you look at the little axe, little hammer, and it goes down, there's a little space right here, and there's a little wobble that you can see. I think you can see a little bit better in this image. When you change direction of your cards, it creates a float or a skip, depending on which direction your card is turning, and this causes a scallop along the edge every time you change directions. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just the mechanics of weaving. When you turn the cards in an opposite direction, it just does a little dip. Because what you're doing is, of course, when you're weaving, when you turn the cards, it takes your thread and it either twists it in a clockwise or counterclockwise direction, depending on how it's threaded. And if you're turning forward and it's turning all this way, and then you turn it backwards, then it undoes itself, one twist, which is what causes that little scallop. So the solution is to turn your selvage cards, which is the edge cards, always forward, always in one direction. And that will get rid of that little that it does. You can add a contrasting edge if your pattern doesn't have a selvage edge, like a solid edge. So if you look at these these pictures here, the blue and yellow, you can see the wobble. It's because the pattern goes right to the edge of the band. And it's just, there's nothing you can do about it. When you reverse the direction of the cards, it will wobble. The next image is a pattern I got off Pinterest. And I liked it quite a bit, but I thought, oh, the edges are going to do that thing. I don't want it to do that. So I added a contrasting band on the edge of just 2 cards moving straight ahead. And it smoothed the edge out quite a bit. And you can actually see that trim on one of Agnes's garments. I sell a lot of my weaving. I like to sort of know where it is just because I like to know what it looks like. The other reason you don't necessarily want to move your cards back and forth is when you reverse the card, you also sometimes can see your weft thread. Well, that's not a problem if your weft is the same color as the edge cards. But you see in this image, I'm using a pale weft. I'm using yellow, which causes this neat little dot along the edge. It actually looks really sharp. But if you reverse the cards on the edge, all of a sudden, the weft will go over the warp and it will show. And you can see it there where there's a couple spots where the yellow weft is poking along the edge. Again, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. You're not making a mistake. It's just the mechanics. When you change the direction of the salvage cards, the weft will show. So turn your salvage cards in a single direction. I'll show you a couple of pictures on how to keep it straight. It works really well. Now, when you do this, it will cause extra tension on those edge cards. Because as I said, when you're doing tablet weaving, it's twisting the threads in various directions. And if you're going 4 forward and 4 back, it's twisting it 4 times and then untwisting it 4 times. So your middle cards won't have any extra tension because it won't have this extra twist. But the salvage cards do. It's okay. It's not a big problem. You can work around it. And the way you work around it is at regular intervals, you just either flip the cards. This is where I might tend to lose people, or you can reverse them because either thing will work. So I use marks on my loom. I don't know how well you can see this. My loom has some graphics on it here. And I put a pin in my weaving to mark where I last changed the direction of the cards. And when this pin hits this sun and moon here, that's when I know, oh, it's been a certain distance. I should reverse my salvage cards and then undo the tension. I just do that so it's spaced apart. What on earth do I mean when I'm talking about flipping your cards? This tends to confuse people. This is why I drew a graphic. So in tablet weaving, one of the mechanics involved in it is the twist, either the S or the Z. You see those words flipping around. And what it has to do with, if you can see this image, it has to do with how the thread goes through the card. So the thread, of course, goes through the holes in the card and either comes out to the front, which is sometimes called S, or it comes out to the back, which is sometimes called Z. There are some nomenclature things that we'll cover a little bit as well. So all you do to flip your card is you literally just flip it around the vertical axis. So if you have yarn, I have yarn, I pick a card with a nice big hole going through your card. And it's getting to the point where it needs to be, the tension needs to be released. You just do this. And now the thread is coming out on the other side. So this image is quite, I took it from Peter Collingwood. If you try it, this will make a lot of sense. And again, this would work better in a workshopping thing where I can actually show you. But this will help you undo the twist on the edges and then give you that nice, smooth pattern. Some patterns you absolutely have to follow this direction. If you're working with Appleseas and Fox Noses, if you try to do this pattern and do not turn your salvage cards always forward, it will actually muck up the edge of the pattern. Anybody have any questions about that so far?
Yes. How often do you make the change? 3 inches, 4 inches? It was difficult to see where it was on the loom.
Mine actually is about 18 inches.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It just depends how tight you're getting them. If you know, you'll get a lot of tension building up in this area where you're working. And all I do is I use a chopstick to force the tension out of my way. So I just do this every now and then and flip it over the back bar just to keep this nice and straight. And then the tension builds up here. So that way you don't have to deal with, you know, if you get too much tension from the twist building up, you can't turn the cards evenly. So I just push it out of my way. I use a chopstick because it just doesn't abrade my fingers. So like I said, for mine, so here's my weaving. My pin is over here. And I don't want to actually reverse it till I'm all the way over here. You can turn it more often if you like. It's just, it will cause the weft to show. And if you're doing an alternate color weft, maybe you want them further apart. If you keep it at regular intervals, it becomes a little bit less noticeable, I find.
Then it becomes a feature.
Absolutely. Like there's one of those patterns that, you know which one I'm talking about, the Oelsberg one, which is this one, where you have to reverse the pattern ever so often. And if you just do it at regular intervals, it just helps keep it look much tidier. Okay, anything else? Moving stuff around because I have other props. I have so many props. So I'm going to move into where am I? These are my tips for what works for me for keeping track of your patterns. So some patterns are super easy. They're 4 forward, 4 back. And some are very complicated. This one I have a screenshot of is fairly simple. I can do this one without thinking about it now. But when I first started doing it, I would lose track of where I was all the time. So if you're doing a pattern where all the cards turn together, so your classic 4 forward, 4 back, and there's nothing wrong with those. I'm quite fond of them. They're nice and simple and soothing, and they come up with some really nice designs. You can take an object like a pencil or, and this is Kiva's fault because she taught me this a long time ago, to use a knife. And so for some reason, I often pull out a butter knife when I'm doing this. Put an object beside you, pointing in the direction that you are turning. So if you have your pencil and I'm turning forward, I'll point the pencil away from me. I do my 4 turns. I throw my last weft, my 4th weft. Before I beat it, I move the pencil. Then I beat. And then I do my 4 back. And before I do that last beat, I move the pencil. Why do I always move the pencil before? It's so that you can keep, so you know if the pencil is facing forward, your next turn will be forward. If the pencil is facing towards you, your next turn will be towards you. So always make sure you throw that last weft, then move the pencil, then move on to your next set of steps. If you have a pattern that's really complicated or more than 4, like let's say it's 8, the pattern is 8 picks or 12 picks or 24 picks, or some of the ones on Apple's use are like 72 picks. Don't stop in the middle as much as you can help it. Phone rings, let it ring. Do not stop in the middle because you will lose track of where you are. It's somewhat easier if you can just go through the entire sequence. So that this one I showed here, I can now do this one without thinking, but I don't like to break in the middle. I have to do the entire sequence. If I do the entire sequence, then I can just keep doing it and I don't lose track where I am. But if I break in the middle, how am I going to remember where I am? You can use the marks on the cards to help keep you straight as well. So the important thing to remember when I say keep track of where you are is what is home. Home being your base position, your starting position. You can use the letters on your cards. There are some problems with doing that, which I will go over later. You can use marks on the edge. Some people will color the edge of their cards, or some commercial cards come with a colored edge. I use these little wooden cards, and I don't know if you can see this. They have quite a strong grain pattern on them, and I use that so I know what is up and down. So if I have all my cards threaded properly and I'm moving along, and I see that one of the cards is offset like this, I know that there's something wrong with him. He's in the wrong spot. So maybe I dropped him somewhere, and this one card is out of position. So I can tell at a glance that my card is out of position. Same thing with, these, or these very pretty ones. Or I used to use these cut down playing cards. So you've got, the face, so you know what the top is. And also when you cut them, one bottom is flat and the rest is curved. So you can tell even without even looking if one of your cards is out of position. You can also separate your packs. I see we have a kitty photobombing there. This is much like the knife thing, where if you have a pattern like the one that's in the picture there, that requires, as opposed to being all cards moving forward or all cards moving backwards, it requires some cards to move forward and some cards to move backwards. I separate them. So anything that's going backwards, so turning towards me, I slide it out and I pull it towards me, like you see in that picture. And the cards that are all closer to the loom are the ones that are going to go forward. That way, if I'm watching TV and, oh, look, it's Chris Hemsworth. I look up, ooh, Chris Hemsworth. What's going where? Okay, these guys are going forward and these ones are going backwards. It helps me keep track. Some people prefer to count and turn the cards one at a time. Mary does that. The woman who wrote Apples, and Foxes, she turns her cards one at a time. Clearly it works for her because she's a masterful weaver. I like to turn them in chunks if I can. So I pull everything that's going forward, and everything that's going backwards, I pull closer towards me. This is particularly useful if you're doing a pattern like the Cambridge Diamonds, where the entire project has something called pack idling, where half the cards turn and you throw your weft, and then the other half of the cards turn and you throw the weft. So it's definitely easier if you can separate the pack to keep them straight. And you can also see that I'm using some different colored cards there. So you can use different colored cards to keep yourself organized. I'm just gonna take a drink here. So you see in these pictures that I have cards that are stained green and are unstained. You can also use your playing cards. When I was using playing cards, I used to separate by the black set and the red set, just so I could see what I'm doing. But this means I don't need to count. So if you look at the pattern that's on the left, and I don't have the threading showing, and that's intentional because it's a copyrighted pattern. And what you don't see, you can see very, 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 very tiny at the very bottom there. There are salvage cards. So there are 3 salvage cards. And then if you look at the way this pattern is drawn, just so you know, white means turn forward and gray means turn backwards. So you can see that the sequence for this design has sometimes all the cards turn forward, and sometimes half them turn backwards and half them turns forwards, and sometimes they all turns backwards. So they have some different steps, but they're in groups of 3. There's 3 salvage cards on the left, which are my green cards. And then there's a group of 3 that always turn together in unison, and those are my 3 unstained cards. And there's another group of 3 that always turn together. These are the middle, I'm pointing, like you can see what I'm pointing on the screen. These are the middle parts of the pattern. And then there's 3 salvage cards, and those are my other 3 colors. So what this means is I can look down at a glance and know, oh, when the cards that have to come towards me to turn backwards now, it's just these green ones. So I'm just going to grab the green ones. I don't have to count. This is easy with, this is a narrow pattern, so it's nice and easy. But sometimes you get really wide patterns, and you don't want to have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So by using the different colored cards or markings on the edge of your cards, and separating your packs like this, it just helps keep it straightforward. In the second photo, I am turning the salvage cards forward, and I'm turning the pattern cards towards me. Again, it's just with the different colors, it makes it easy to see what I'm doing. And I'm going to do a selling point here. I get these cards from House Blue Dog on the island, and they will stain them pretty much any color you ask. So I have an unstained set, I have a green set, and I have a blue set. And this is how I keep all my weaving straightforward. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay. How to keep track of more complex patterns. Keep it simple. I use a ruler. So this is from a book called The Lily Grove, with another excellent book. And the patterns are something called 3-1 twill. And each pick, so each time you turn the cards, is different. And you pick the design out. And it's a really impressive technique that I am terrible at because I have no attention span. But all I do to keep track, here's the design. I just lay a ruler on it and move it up, just like you would do with knitting or crochet, and just move it up with everyone. Because of course, with tablet weaving, you work from the bottom up in patterns. Here's another one that's very complicated. This is from Appleseas and Fox Noses. I would never be able to keep track of this if I didn't find some way to mark it or move a ruler up and down. So, and I move the ruler after each step. So just like with the knife or with changing your packs, throw the weft, move your ruler, then beat. That way you know that your next step is already laid out for you, as opposed to, oh, wait, did I just do that one? Or do I need to do the next one? So I find it easier to make sure you always set it up before you are finished. So set it up, then beat, so your next step is ready to go. Any other questions about that? Anybody alive out there? I see some faces, but you know.
Yes, we're alive.
Okay, so your band is done. You finished your pattern, you've got all the way to the edge of the loom, you're ready to go. Now you need to finish it. And there's two things I'm covering in this section. One is how to prevent it from unraveling, so you don't have to tie it. And the other one is how to wet finish it. Wet finishing is critical. Any weaver will tell you, you must wet finish your product. So I apologize a little bit. These are not my photos. And this is where my very Greek hand gestures will hopefully make this straightforward. What you want to do effectively is when you're finished weaving, you're going to take your weft and you're going to weave it back into the body of the band. And that will stop it from unraveling. It's that simple. What you want to do is cut 3 pieces of thread about 3 times longer than your band. So if your band is this wide, you want them, say, this wide. Use something thin and smooth. So you probably don't want to use the same thread as your warp and weft, because if your weft is this thick, chunky yarn, you want to use something thinner because you're going to use this extra thread to pull your weft through. Sometimes I use some weaving cotton or some tencel. Something strong and smooth will work best. So what you're going to do is you're going to throw your weft. So it's over here. Then you're going to throw that extra piece of thread in, but you're going to fold it in half and run it back. So there's a loop on the end. So in the picture, you can see that there's 3 different color loops. There's a white, there's a pink, and there's a green. Doesn't matter. They don't have to be different colors. They just did that for the photo. So your weft is on this side, and on top of it, so here's your weft. And you have a little loop underneath it. And just ignore that loop. You pretend it's not there. Throw your weft again to the other side. Lay the second thread in with the loop. Throw your weft the 3rd time. Throw your weft in again with a little open with a loop. And then, cut a little bit extra weft off and just cut it off. You're done. You're just going to cut it off. I have a question in the chat. There's a good YouTube video on this technique. Yes, there is, which is easier to explain than my gesturing with my hands. So now you've got this band with the 3 loops. Take your weft, run it through the loop, hang it down, and then just pull the string out. And it'll pull the weft to the other side of the band. Put it in the next loop, pull it out. Next loop, pull it out. And all it's doing is taking that weft and running it back on itself on the last 3 picks. And that will stop it from unraveling. It's nice, easy technique.
So you do it in the reverse order that you originally laid the loops then?
You just want to do it exactly where it is. So if you have thrown it to the left and a loop is to the left, throw it to the right, loops to the right, you just put it into the loop that's right below it, because you throw all 3. So they're all 3 are done. And then you just run it back through itself. I should record myself doing this. This is something that it's much easier to show in person or watch the video. If you search for it online, I can see if I can find it and maybe post it in the Lionsgate forum or on this event. There we go. I'll post on this event. You're not even turning your cards at that point. So you throw your weft, put the thread in, turn your cards. Throw your weft, put the extra loop in, turn your cards. Throw your weft, put the extra loop in, turn your cards. But as opposed to throwing your weft again, now you're just going to run it through that loop, pull the loop through, run it through the loop, pull the loop through, run the loop. And like I said, all it's doing is weaving your weft back in 3 times. And that should be enough to make it nice and solid, and now it won't unravel. I know it sounds confusing, but if you look at it and do it, you'll be like, oh, that makes so much sense now. I get it. I get it. So once you try it.
It's brilliant.
I believe what Jacqueline was asking was, yes, you are basically weaving back in the direction that you wove.
Yes.
As you put them back in, you're going back along what you were weaving.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it works like a charm. And now you can put that, and like you don't have to worry about it coming apart. And if you like, then you can just tie a nice little tassel at the end, so you have a nice little tassel belt, and you don't have to worry about it coming apart. Thank you, Kushag, for the assistance on my mental not understanding. Wet finishing. So any weaver will agree this is a critical thing. So you see these 3 pictures? This is the same band. And this is actually a silk band. You think silk should be nice and soft, right? Well, when you take it off a loom, I tend to find they're always really, really stiff. And you think, oh, this is horrible. I don't like this. This is really stiff. So if you look at the middle photo where the band is standing straight up, there's no starch in that. That's just, I took this silk band off the loom and I held it up and took a photo because I knew what I wanted to do here. And the 3rd photo is after I washed it. You see now it's nice and drapey. It's nice and soft. So wet finishing will relax that extra tension that's in the band. So when it's on the loom, it's really tense, it's stretched out. And when you wet finish it, it relaxes it, and then it makes it nice and soft. The other thing it does is if you've got a little bit of wonky edges, a little bit of uneven tension, it'll help fix that. It's not going to fix, nothing can fix this one. I mean, nothing can fix that. It's just done. But it will help, you can help smooth out some of your uneven edges if you wet finish it properly. And this is also the important bit. It will stop it from puckering. So if you take a band that has not been wet finished or washed and sew it on some garb and then throw it in the wash, the band will relax. So it's not actually shrinking, it's relaxing this way. Then your garment will pucker and you get this funny pucker look. And you see it a lot on cotton tunics. People have bought some nice trim. You get it with commercial trim too. If you buy trim in a fabric store, they'll tell you the same thing. Make sure you wash it first because it's been stretched really taut on those commercial looms too. So you need to wash it to relax it. Some people just take their trim and throw it in a mesh bag and throw it in the washer. I don't do that. A couple reasons for that. One, I live in an apartment building. I don't have a washer dryer. I have to go down the hallway and I am cheap and I'm not going to do that. Also, I want to know exactly what's been done with the band. So I want to do it myself. So what I do is I soak my band in the hottest water appropriate for the fiber. So if I'm doing crochet cotton or weaver's cotton, I put it in a glass bowl and I actually stick it in the microwave and I almost boil that sucker. I put it in the microwave for like 2 minutes, make the water nice and hot because I want any shrink in the fiber to come out as well. So like 2/8 weaving cotton, it's unmercerized. It hasn't been shrunk. It's going to shrink as well as relax. Crochet cotton doesn't shrink, but it relaxes. And I would never boil wool unless I want to boil wool. So I use the most appropriate for the fiber. Silk, I wouldn't put that hot either. I put it in warm. But I want to do it more harshly than I think the end user is going to. And you never know what the end user is going to do with their garment. So I try to be a little cruel. If you want the wool to full a little bit, felt a little bit, which will blur your design, you can put a little soap in it. If you think it isn't dye fast, you can put a little soap in it or a little vinegar and a little salt to set the dye. Because some, like particularly red silk, will bleed. So you want to set the dye a little bit. Once I'm done, once it's soaked, had a good hot bath, now I want to wring it out. But it's not cloth. You can't just wring it. And also that'll twist the bejesus out of it. Sorry, pardon my language. No one taught me this. This is what I do, and it works for me. Other people may have different opinions or different ideas what to do. I wring it out by pulling it between my fingers. I just pull it out like this. And I grip this band really tightly. I do it all the way in one direction, and then I turn around and do it the other way. This does a couple of things. One, it forces all the water out of your fiber. The other thing it does is it's stretching it. It is pulling it along the grain of my weave to straighten the edge. And it's this thing that I'm doing here when it's wet that helps fix a little bit of your unevenness and your tension issues. And then I typically hang it to dry. Some people will put it in a lingerie bag, put it in the dryer, whatever works for you. Wool, I would never put in the dryer. No. Silk, never put it in the dryer. If you want to add a little bit of sheen, if it's linen or silk, you can touch it with a bit of a hot iron. Not too hot or you will melt your silk. But if you're having like a tussa silk, which is that raw, toothy silk, and if you touch it with an iron, just a little bit, you can actually bring a nice sheen out on that raw silk and make it a really nice finished product.
With silk, quite often what I will do is smack it against the table, like take it, hold it by one end and smack it against the table to get the sheen on it instead of actually ironing it. I find that works better for the most part, but I'm not using tussa silks. I'm using bombyx. So
the bombyx I find is so shiny you don't need to do anything to it, and it's just as gorgeous. That red band I showed earlier is the bombyx silk, and it just has this nice, lovely sheen. I haven't thought about beating it up, but I will maybe try that next time. Does anybody have any questions on the finishing the edge or the wet finishing? No, okay. So why is my pattern upside down or otherwise messed up? Well, the simple thing is there is no standard notation for tablet weaving, none. You may think there is, but there isn't. Typically, Europeans do it one way and North Americans do it another, but you never actually know. There's different ways to define both your card threading, so how the card is in relation to you, and different ways to define the threading of the card, threading of the yarns through the card. Different authors will all use a different home position. And by that, I mean, Some patterns define AB on the top. Some define AD on the top. Some have it reversed the other direction entirely. They're all different. So you have to always figure out what the pattern key is. We've all warped band upside down. It happens all the time. If you go onto the historical tablet weaving page or any tablet weaving page on Facebook, and you'll see like every 4 days, why is my pattern upside down? What have I done wrong? Well, what you've done is you haven't figured out what the key for the pattern is. So this graphic shows you 3 sort of common, actually it's 4, which is funny, I need to fix that. 4 sort of common card setups. The first one is from Peter Collingwood, and you notice, and I have my card here, it has the cards numbered clockwise, A, B. Actually, it's even worse. It's A, B, C, D. So it's got A and D towards the weaver and B and C towards the band. But if you look at the next couple, they're different. So the first one is Peter Collingwood, which is the North American sort of nomenclature. The middle one, that nice pink, is the Lily Grove. And you can see in the sort of, it's actually the same book spread open. There's sort of the pink side and there's the white side right next to it. It has A and B closer to the weaver and C and D on the opposite side, which is exactly backwards from the Peter Collingwood. And then the third one there is something you see on Pinterest a lot, and it's actually a modified version of Guntram's tablet weaving thingy. And you see the D and C are towards the weaver. Like they're all different. So never assume that you know the setup of the pattern. Your chances are, unless you're working exclusively from one book, you're probably going to guess wrong. Always look for a key, and they always have them somewhere. And what you need to look up is the card setup. And by that, I mean how they define A, B, C, D, which I will show in a minute, and how they define the thread direction, the S and your Z, and how they define what your home position is. Like I said, North American cards typically assume that the printed side is to the weaver's right. So I don't know if you can see me very well. Go to my chair. The assumption usually with North American patterns is that A and D are closest to the weaver. So the print is facing this way, and it goes sort of clockwise, A, B, C, D. So when you're going to thread your cards, that's the way it'll work. European patterns usually are the exact opposite. They assume it goes A, B, C, D. So counterclockwise. That's really confusing. That's why I don't necessarily like these cards printed A, B, C, D, E. The assumption is that the printed side faces to the weaver's left, so that these other threads are towards you. But always check, because it could be different. You also, like I said, want to check what the home position is. Some define A, B on the top, some A, D, some D, A. Some patterns use S, Z to define the thread direction. Some use these slashes, but you need to find out what the slashes mean. Usually, it's referring to how the card looks on the loom. So you can't really see very well. Ugh. I don't know if you can see. No, they're too close together. You can't really see. The way that the yarn is threaded through the card will determine the way the card angles. So if the thread is going through the card from what I consider to be the front and coming out the back, the card kind of sits like this. So typically, if they have a slash in this direction, they mean the thread comes out on the back of the card. If it's like that, it typically means the thread's coming out in the front. But like I said, all these books always have a key, and you have to look at them, and you have to remember they're always going to be different. Never assume you know. I have all these Post-it notes all over all of my books where I write down how I understand it and leave it that way. So on Facebook or Pinterest, you sometimes see card patterns written in the style of Appleseas and Foxnoses. And Appleseas and Foxnoses is my favorite book, which you can tell because it's all beat up. I love this book. And the other thing that's really nice about this book is one of the co-authors, Mary V, who actually is a friend of Kiva's. She's a Laurel in the SCA, as well as playing in a bunch of really tight reenactment groups in Europe. But she hangs out on the Facebook historical tablet weaving book Facebook group. So if you get stuck on one of her patterns, sometimes she can answer you and help you out. which is awesome. I mean, how often do you have the author right there in the Facebook group with you? So with Appleseas, the lettering is counterclockwise. They use the slashes to define where the card is threaded. They use gray boxes to say it's going forward, pardon me, say it's going backwards. And they use white boxes, and the gray to use the reverse. I've run across a couple patterns that are exactly the same, except they use gray to mean forward and white to use back. So you always have to make sure you know the key. It also shows that A is closest to the weaver. So this little diagram that is one of the patterns that they have published on the internet. Otherwise, I would not have shown the threading diagram because I'm very particular about copyright. But in this book, like in every other book, there is a section that explains how it works. So it's up to you as the weaver to make sure you read that before you thread it. And it's critical because, like I said, they're all a little bit different. Here we go. Where's the section I'm looking for? And in fact, one of the reasons I like this book in particular is it goes from easy to hard. So they actually show you step by step for the first pattern how to thread it really carefully. And they actually have an illustration showing the threads going through the cards. But you see Appleseas and Foxnoses on the internet a lot because when they were doing their first book, if they got a certain number of likes on their Facebook page, they released a new pattern. So there's all these patterns floating around that are in their notation. But if you don't know their notation, you're going to get lost. So you have to make sure you follow it and use a little man to show what side. Ooh, is that not in focus? Ooh, I can't see it. To show what side is closest to the weaver. Another one that you may see is twistedthreads.org. This is actually a great website. It's actually an interactive tool that runs in your browser. There's a whole bunch of patterns on it that other people have loaded up, but you can also use it to build your own tablet weaving pattern. So if you want to try a different color, or if you want to create your own design, you can go to this page and use it. It's actually fantastic. She uses a similar, she's European. It's run by Sheila Lewis, who also has a website you may have run across if you've done the infamous Oathsburg little squares, little diamonds pattern, where she's documented it. So you possibly run across her website. Again, make sure you look at the key. So she has A and B on the side of the weaver, and she uses the gray boxes to show going backwards. Now you can also see that there's a little pics demonstrated by these little colored ovals. And what that's actually showing you is which way the thread is twisting. So if you're counterclockwise or clockwise. And so if you're getting messed up in your pattern, if you look at which way the color is pointed, it helps you figure it out. They show, oh, look at that, I have a typo right there. D is close to the weaver. It's C, B is closer to the weaver. But it's a good page. And again, they have the key on every single page. Guntrum's tablet weaving thingy, another thing you see all over the internet. This is an old piece of software. I think he wrote it Windows 2003. It still runs on Windows 10. I know, because I run it on my work laptop. You see them on Pinterest, but you have to be careful because somebody's actually gone in and modified Guntrum's code and changed some of his configurations. But you see these patterns, like in this screenshot a lot. But Guntrum's, if you have lucky enough to get the application, it's still on the internet. You can still download it. It has a different card setup altogether. A and B are closest to the weaver. This is their key here. And here's his page. I see something in the chat. Where did it go? Yes, Guntrum's a great grumpy old Laurel. Yes, he is never going to update this. He knows his setup is wonky and backwards, but he doesn't care. He just will never update it again. But he does beautiful work. Now, the pattern you see below, the chain pattern, is somebody's gone and modified Guntrum's product and done their own version of it. And you see these all over Pinterest. What is different between Guntrum's and the one that's below it? If you can see down at the very bottom, at the right, there's a little chair that shows D and C closest to the weaver. So the card setup is backwards from Guntrum's. So it shows D and C closest to the weaver. So it's the sort of, I'm going to say, I don't know if you can see my pencil marks on the card. So it just, you have to have it turn the opposite direction with the D and C closest to the weaver. So you have to make sure you always find the key. Otherwise, I guarantee you, you'll warp it upside down or something backwards. So this is me just going through what I just said. The whole position has been modified to have D closest to the weaver, D in the top right. If you see something that looks like Guntrum's, it could be the Guntrum setup, which has B closest to the weaver, or it could be this one. Look for the little chair icon. It's the main thrust of this is never think you know what you're doing and always look it up, because they're all different, which is very, very frustrating. But there is no standard notation. You can guess if the author is North American or European. It's probably clockwise or counterclockwise based on where they live. But how do you know? It's the internet, and you find all the stuff on the internet. You always have to check the key because they're all different. Okay, so what happens? It's upside down. Sorry, cat stuff. So there's two potential issues when I say upside down. One is the wrong side of the band, so that jagged bad side, this side, is on the top, and your pretty pattern is on the bottom. Okay, what you've done is you have it's this issue, it's the threading issue, where the pattern assumes two sets towards you and not the other way. Usually you can bring the band to the top if you flip the cards. So change them. So if it's Z, make it S, and then turn them a quarter turn towards you. That usually resets the cards enough that you have it in the right position. Doesn't always work. It doesn't work if you have a pattern that has one color and then three of another. You might have to jig them a little bit more. But typically, if it's upside down, if the pattern is on the bottom, flip your cards and turn them towards you. And that should fix the orientation of your cards. Because like I said, the problem is you just have A in the wrong spot. The other thing you see a lot is the pattern is right, but it's jagged. So you see the design on the top, but it's all jaggy. It's not nice and smooth like this. That is an SZ problem. So what's happened there is you have the threads going through this way, perhaps, but they need to be the other way. So again, flip the cards and then reorient to make sure that the home is in the right spot. And that typically can fix your problem. It can't fix it if it's like one white thread and three blacks. You can't get it back in the right position, or if they're across from each other. Some of them can be fixed if it's got a lot of tablet weaving patterns have too dark and too light, and they're side by side, and those you can just twist around and get into the right position. But usually, so if it's the pattern is not right on the top, but it's jagged, it's because your S and Z is wrong. Well, wrong compared to the way the pattern is written, not wrong compared to what you've done. You haven't made a mistake. You just didn't find the key. So always look for the key. It'll save you so much stress. Make notes on what's going to work for you. I can never remember what S is and what Z is. I can never remember. I don't know why. I just cannot remember. And then there's the slashes. I can't remember those either. I can never remember. So all of my tablet weaving books have Post-it notes on them where I define what it means. Because I think not on the front, which means the threads are coming from the back and coming out in the front, and not on the back where the threads go through this way and come out this way. So I always take a Post-it note and write on it what it means, and I use it to bookmark my spot. Oh, look at that. So one I don't have it written on. But usually I write a little Post-it note on what works for me. Some people will always remember what S means. And when they say S, they mean because it kind of looks like an S. It looks like a Z going through the card. For some reason, I can never remember it. So use a tool that works for you. Like I said, I just put a little Post-it note and define whatever they've written, S and Z, and I put equals, and I say front or back, because that's what works for me. Maybe they have the slash notation and you understand S and Z, so write S or Z, whatever works for you. I just find that that's easier than trying to always twist my brain into what it means. Does anybody have any questions on that? Because that was a fairly big chunk that's kind of hardish, but easier to do in person.
I'm just thinking, I know in some of my handouts when I did for ankle weaving, the notes on the fiber, because they talk about S twist and Z twist in the fiber itself, and it's basically, that makes sense to me.
Right.
See the S and the Z, because
And I
it's
know-
related to another fabric, another fiber art.
That's what I meant by remembering what works for you. For what, like I said, for whatever reason, and you're right, it has to, if you spin, for example, you know, S spin and Z spin, which is left hand, clockwise or counterclockwise. For whatever reason, I just cannot not remember that. So I use my own little mnemonic. And so like I said, all my tablet weaving books have these little post-it notes everywhere in them where I note it down. Other people who do a lot of spinning or other textile arts will know the S and Z off the top of their head and then go, why is it showing me a slash? Because the slash is talking about the way the card is oriented. I don't care about the card, I care about the thread. So like I said, just write it down and it helps massively. And aren't you glad to know that everybody has warped something upside down at least once? I'm going to pick on Kiva. I think she left to go 10 tiny humans or have a drink or something. A few years ago, we were making garb for Anya's step down, Anya's pelican elevation. And she was going to weave some trim for the girls. And of course, Kiva is a master weaver, like amazing. She does brocade work, all this gorgeous work. And she was doing a fairly simple diamond pattern. And I get this message, oh my God, it's upside down. Because we've all done it. You're someone who's a Laurel, and she's definitely warped something upside down. Like I said, we all absolutely do it. Oh, she's back. Oh, she's saying I'm lying. No, she never warped it upside down. And I've done it. We've all done it. And it's frustrating. And you're like, what have I done wrong? And the answer is just, you didn't find the key.
I've also found that when I ended up with it upside down, I've actually loosened my tension a bit, and actually, because I had got a couple inches, I didn't want to start all again. I just actually carefully turned bound my cards together and then carefully literally physically flipped the entire band.
I've done that too. If I can't figure out how to fix it any other way, I have just taken the band off and turned it upside down. Works well if you're on an ankle. Works really well if you're on an Osberg. It's super easy to do it there. But yeah, we've all done it. It's such a common mistake. It's not even a mistake. It's just misinterpreting the instructions. And it's because there's no nomenclature. And we all think, oh, I know what I'm doing. I've woven tons of stuff. Yeah, no, don't never assume. When I switch between books, I always have to go, okay, wait, what am I doing here? And you find random patterns on the internet and you're like, what is the setup? So like I said, you got to find out what the setup is supposed to be.
Do you ever test new patterns, Morweena, just using like scrap yarn to try and figure out whether your interpretation is correct rather than jumping right into your final threads?
Usually I'm using relatively inexpensive threads. I have definitely used cheap weaving cotton. I was trying to figure out the techniques in the Lily Grove, this book. I said I'm terrible at it. So I just warped up some cheap 2/8 cotton because I wouldn't want to waste my silk making mistakes, because this stuff looks really amazing in silk. Let me show you one of her samples. You'll see this and you'll just be in awe. Oops, there we go. Like that looks, that'll look amazing in silk. So sometimes just to practice, I just use crochet cotton, or because I weave modernly, I weave towels and stuff. I have lots of 2/8 cotton kicking around, so I'll use that.
Couldn't you just figure it out from, like, if you see the without a key, but seeing the finished product, could you not possibly figure it out from that, knowing that sort of every 4 is a different card? Or could you not recreate it?
Well, in that particular one, it's a practice thing, but
yeah, I know when I learned to do card weaving, they let us make our own patterns. And of course, being a cross stitcher, I went, all right, 4 stitches by whatever, 4 stitch repeat. And
oh, we lost you, Shag. You're talking. We can't hear you.
Sorry, I was doing the tab thing, talking with my hands. I was able to go, right, that's a repeat of 4 by whatever line, and I had a nice little alternating leaf pattern set up that I had the cards basically done and started weaving within about 20 minutes. But I think that was what Amanda used to call my mutant brain.
Well, it's also, there's something called double weave, where you're much like the 3-1 twill, where you're picking the pattern out with how you turn the cards individually, and you actually graph the pattern out using Excel or something. Right now, that's still beyond me. I know other people do it really, really well. I don't.
Mine was very basic, just keep on turning the cards.
Yeah, well, I mean, like the Augsburg one, which I'll be right back. I have a great big band in the other room. It is just turning it all forward, and it's this amazing design. Well, actually, this is a version of it. Little zigzaggies. And it's just a different alternation of the same thing. And that one's all forward. But maybe it's something you grasp better than other people. There's a lot of math and understanding how fibers work involved. And I see there is a question from Yakamina. Yakamina.
Hi. I have a question about borders. And I know you said that to make sure that you don't get any unevenness, you turn it a particular number of times and then you go back, and I get that. But what I'm running into is after I've wet finished my band, the border threads are very loose, some of them. How do I prevent that?
Are they loose when they're on the loom too? Like, are they a little bit softer tension than the inside?
I don't think so. It's very consistent. So I'm either consistently always doing them looser while I'm weaving, or it's just like something that happens because I don't notice it when I really take it off the loom before I wash it. So I don't know whether it's a washing thing.
If the edges are looser, it could just be that you're not drawing in enough. And so the inside is drawing in a little bit more than the outside. Or, and I found it particularly with tencel because the knots slip. Because I'm mucking around with those selvage cards so much, like pushing the twist forward, they pull a little bit and they get a little soggy. So if I have it in front of me, you can actually see that my edge cards are a little bit looser than my body cards. These are a little loose. And if I don't do anything about that, it will do what you said. It'll make the edges a little bit loose. I'm a big fan of cheating. So you can see here, you see how this is kind of soft. Yeah. There's more play in this thread than in this thread. Look, I'm playing a harp. Crochet go like that. I just stick a chopstick right here to add a little bit more tension to my selvage cards. Because sometimes, because you're getting a little bit more take up maybe in the body cards than on the edge, you can just do something to help hold them in place to keep them tense while they're, because you probably, what you have, I'm guessing that what you have is that your edge cards are a little bit looser tension than the inner cards. So sometimes I stick, like I said, I just stick a chopstick in the back and I just pick up my selvage cards and it just makes them a little bit tighter. I found I had to do that a lot with tencel, and it's because the knots in tencel don't hold very well. So you have it all nice and tensioned and then you're weaving along, but because you're spending so much time pushing the tension forward on those edge cards, it's pulling on them a lot. Pardon me. Blame the cocktail. And so it actually pulls the knot out.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm using weaving cotton. And yeah, I'll try that. I'll try and see what it does.
Yeah, just try tensioning it a little bit more. And like you can use pieces of paper or something. I eat a lot of sushi. There's a really good sushi restaurant on the block from me. So I have lots of chopsticks kicking around the house. So they're like my favorite tool. I use them when I'm dyeing to stir dye pots, and I use them for weaving to push the tension along because otherwise you cut your fingers.
All right, thank you.
You can also use fishing swivels too. Also, here's a little tip. If you're doing a pattern that's not twist neutral, and by that I mean you don't have the same number of turns in all the cards, so one gets more tension than the other, you can use fishing swivels. So as opposed to tying the threads together at the end, you tie each card, so the 4 threads on each card, into one end of a fishing swivel, and the 4 threads on the other side into another end of a fishing swivel. And you push the tension all the way to the end and spin it on the fishing swivel, and it takes out all the extra twist. So this pattern here, this one, those laurel leaves, they're not twist neutral. There are 2 cards in this pattern that always turn the same direction. So whenever I do this pattern, I use fishing swivels, and I just push all my tension to the end and force it out at the swivel, and the swivel just spins. I use Go to Canadian Tire and pick them up. They're super cheap, and they work like a charm. Halima says, bamboo skewers get into a lot of my work. That's another really good tip, actually, now that you mention it. If you have you've warped up your loom and you want to try your pattern out, something that's easier to unpick than your weft is bamboo skewers. So what you do is you run the skewer through where your weft would go, turn your cards, put a skewer in where your weft would go, turn your cards, put a skewer in, and you can build your pattern up and see if you've got it right without wasting any of your precious warp. Like, let's say you only have a certain amount of silk and you don't want to have any, a lot of times when you're weaving, you have sort of messy blooby things on the ends where you're trying, maybe you got it warped up wrong and you made a mistake. I'm trying to find one that I've got. Oh, look at that, I trimmed it off. I must have one where I have a mistake. So you don't want to waste your precious warp. You test it out with the bamboo skewers instead of your weft. So that way it's just really easy to undo it, because then you just untwist them and pull the skewer out.
I find for new people on ankle weaving too, that can also help them just sort of get the idea of how the weft works and how far to beat, because it's consistent.
So Sheila asks, is there an effective way of doing that with an ankle loom? I assume you mean forcing the twist to the fishing swivel. It's pain, it's fiddly, but it does work. You just have to be patient. So this is where the chopstick comes in, because it's so much easier on your fingers. When you need to push the tension out, you just go all the way to the end and you have to force it along, and sometimes it gets stuck and you keep going. And then when you finally get to that fishing swivel, then you can twist it out. You also have to make sure you don't have big long threads hanging off, because they'll get tangled up in the swivel. Is this Sheila? Is this Gala Sheila? Who is Sheila?
I'm down in Antier in Wastekeep.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were Gala, like Sheila Gala from Chilliwack.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, it is fiddly. It's absolutely fiddly. I do almost all of my weaving on an ankle loom. I do have an Oseberg loom, but I find it uncomfortable for my back. So yeah, and even when I'm doing stuff that's not twist neutral, like I said, I use an ankle loom and I just use those fishing swivels, but it is fiddly to force it all the way around. You have to loosen your tension a little bit and force it around. And I said, definitely use a tool. Do not use your fingers. It will hurt like the dickens if you do that. Or I have found it does anyways. I said, you can use a pencil, but I have lots of, chopsticks are nice and smooth, which is the other reason why I use them. So they're not so harsh on my fine threads.
I have a mini ankle, and the one time I tried it, I literally had to resort to taking the entire thing off the loom to get the twist to move all the way to the end.
A mini might be a problem because you just don't have a lot of room.
Okay, that might be why I'm having so much trouble with it there.
I do, usually when I'm doing twist that stuff, I'm using this guy. This does like a 3.3 meter.
Yeah, you got a lot more room between your pegs than I do.
And then I've got, yeah, you need the space here to get your hands in. Yeah, it's just, you've got a lot of real estate.
It fits in my lap though, and I don't have a lot of general real estate in my home for things.
I put this one on the coffee table and put my feet up. I also have a floor ankle, which takes up a lot less space than it sounds like. I like that one because when it holds about 5.5 meters. It looks huge, but it's really not. And I put it on the floor and I actually tip it into my lap. So if I'm sitting on my couch, it tips into my lap. So the working area is nice and straightforward. And that's the loom actually I take to events most often, because I don't have to worry about stealing somebody's table if I have an ankle loom. So I use the little floor one instead. It doesn't take up very much space. It takes up, this much space by this much space. And I just put it beside the couch. And then the cat knocks it over in the middle of the night, which is what he did last night. He's crazy.
Yeah, they're always. I've got quite a few golden hairs in my weaving.
I used to have this white dog, who's a Malamute cross, and if you know Malamutes and Huskies, oh my God, the shedding is everywhere, and everything I made had white thread in it, white dog hair in it. There was just nothing I could do about it, and she passed away just before Christmas last year, and Kushag actually had bought some of my floor weaving for her daughter for Christmas. And She's like, oh, it has ruby hair in it. I love it. And I get this in it too.
Yeah, I get that too. But Sunshine, our gold kitty, likes to rub her face against the threading on the loom. So get lots of gold hairs.
It's for me leaning forward and just, you know, it gets everywhere. And I get this red curly hair in all of my weaving. It's just part of the process. Does anybody have any other questions? Anything they want to talk about, their own weaving experiences?
I did actually have one other question.
Sure.
When you're like putting trim on, if you have to cut it to get it to be the right length, how do you finish those cut ends?
There is a trick to this.
I figured there was, but I don't know what it is.
So you mean when you're putting it on the garment and you want to overlap it and you don't want to have this big fat turnover?
Yeah, basically we put your ends together, or if say
Okay.
you ended up you wove 2 yards and you only need 1.5 yards, and so you're cutting before the end that you did the nice finish on to get it to be the right length.
That's going to unravel where you cut it, but it, you know, honestly, it doesn't unravel that badly. But when you're putting it on the garment, what you can do to get a nice smooth finish, and this is super fiddly, I admit it, you can either overlap it or you can unweave part of it, take your leftover warp and weave it into the band so that they overlap like this. I wish there is an illustration on the internet that shows how to do this, and it's from the wonderful Mirvi. So you unweave a little bit so you get a bit of a fuzzy edge, and then you just take your warp threads with a needle and weave them into the other part. I know I can't show you. I'll put a link. I'll put an image in this.
I can kind of see in my head what you'd be talking about. I never would have thought to do that, but
yeah, no, I hadn't thought about it either. And then
like darning in ends when you've done pulled thread work.
Yes, exactly. And so Mirvi had posted how to do it, and I'm like, oh my god, it's genius. So I've got a dress where I had the yarn the band came up kind of thick, and I didn't want to overlap it because it would have been just massively thick. And so instead I wove the warp threads back into itself. So I cut it off, I unwove a little bit of it, which actually is fairly hard because, you know, tablet weaving does not really want to unravel. It's not like inkle weaving that unravels really easily. Sorry, I find that to be true. Tablet weaving does not really particularly want to unravel. It's very strong weaving. And then you just darn the warp threads into the band, and it just has a nice smooth finish. It looks great.
Works
Kiva
with
says,
inkle weaving too.
Sorry?
It works with inkle weaving too.
Yeah, it would. I don't know how to inkle weave, which is really funny. Mistress Catron is just gobsmacked that I have no idea how to inkle weave. I can weave on a floor loom. I can tablet weave, but I cannot inkle weave. Mistress Kiva asks, are there any plans for future tablet weaving challenges? You know what? It's this. At Lily Grove. I need to figure out how to do this amazing work. It's gorgeous. I just, for whatever reason, like, it's just a new skill to try. I need to learn double weave in 3-1-4. I should be able to figure it out. I've got good materials. Anybody else have any questions or anything they want to talk about weaving wise or anything else?
Morweena, will you be distributing the PowerPoint?
It's actually in the chat already.
Yeah, she shared it very beginning.
Okay, I was late coming in, sorry.
Okay, it's in the chat. You can download it. It's a bit big. It's 19. Oh, that's a good point. Oh, there we go. It's about 19 megs. It's kind of big. I can also see if I can post it in the Lionsgate forum. I don't think I can.
Since she wasn't in the group when you posted it, it will not show up in her chat.
I'll post it again.
Now we're done, I'll show up.
Okay, Morweena, I have a question.
Sure.
I was trying to I downloaded the Dublin Dragons or whatever from the internet, from Pinterest. Couldn't get it to work, tried everything I could. it was recommended for me that I should do it as a 3-hole instead of a 4-hole. I don't even understand empty hole weaving, and maybe just a quick overview of why anyone might want to do an empty hole weaving.
Dublin Dragons?
Yeah, that's it. And I never did get it to work.
This one is a 2-hole. I haven't done a 3-hole. I've done 2-hole. So what this means, for anybody who's wondering, so your typical tablet weaving card has 4 holes in it. When you're doing a 2-hole, these 2 cards have threads in it, and these 2 are empty. So this actually gives you a slightly narrower band, it's slightly thinner. My edge cards are for, pardon me, my young cat's beating up my old cat because he's a little jerk. He's super cute, but he's an asshole. So the edge cards are 4-threaded. I can actually, this pattern I find, there's so many versions of it on the internet.
Yeah.
So many. And some of them are 4-hole and some of them are 2-hole. I think the 2-hole is easier in the sense that you see that this just has just 2 colors.
Yeah.
I can't really make it in focus. Usually the 4-hole ones have an extra color on the outside edge.
I've done that pattern in both 4 and 2-hole. I have really good versions of the patterns. If you want, Atan, I can send them to you.
Please.
Yeah, he's done some really good examples of it. Mine's a little bit wonky.
Actually, the 3-hole actually it came from me. I was actually playing around with the willful pursuit of complexity that does the vacant hole, which is just a single one missing thread. And this is actually I basically came up with the design on my own.
You got it. Okay.
It's not exactly the same.
Hold it still. There. Got it. Okay.
But because hadn't had luck work when I tried it quite a while ago. And when I was playing around trying to figure out how to design with the 3-hole, the Icelandic vacant thread hole, I just thought I'd try it because I thought it would lend itself to that pattern. So that's where that one came from.
I will say when you're doing 2-hole, the main problem I have with it is, so normally when you have 4 threads, the card is really stable. When you have 2 threads, it has a tendency to want to stand on its end. It spins a lot. So you can either use a weaving board where the cards are supported, or every time between your picks, put it in an alligator clip, or I use a Roman hair stick because it's got two prongs.
Oh, good idea.
Safety pin, whatever you've got to hold them still. But you have to put them in between every pick. Otherwise, they have a tendency to get away from you.
Right.
So this is the 4-hole.
Hold it still. Hold it still.
Oh yeah, and it's hard to get it to focus.
There.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, but he did a really good version of that. I saw it on the SC Academy.
Yeah, I saw it too, and I thought, but I'm
That's
missing fight practice because I would make him teach it to me there.
The funny thing with that one is, it doesn't seem to matter if it's 2-hole or 4-hole. It all is the same turning sequence, and it's in 2s.
It's once you get used to it, it's actually really easy to weave. Once you have it down, it weaves quick.
It's all in 2s, definitely.
Yeah, I love that pattern.
It actually defeated me, and I haven't card woven for about 2 years because of it.
I need to tackle this one again because I use Tencel.
Hold it still. Hold it still. Don't move it.
Okay. Because I am a weak person whose arms are going like this. The knots pull out on the loom, so I was having some tension problems, so I got really frustrated and cut it off. So I need to try it with something that isn't so slippy. This is a gorgeous design. Absolutely gorgeous.
Well, you've got me inspired to get back to it, and I need something that's more relaxing than the tapestry.
Oh yeah, your tapestry weaving is amazing, and I just look at it all the time, and it makes me think of this is totally modern. I have a friend who's a painter named Chris Woods, and his paintings look like photographs. And your tapestry, because it's the same technique with the shading, it just reminds me a lot. And it's different but similar. It's like you've done Opus Anglican embroidery in tapestry weaving. It's amazing.
Thank you. Much bigger than the Opus.
Much bigger. I find tablet weaving super soothing. And with how much time we're all spending sitting with our butts on the couch watching TV,
Yeah.
do a lot of really simple bands because I can do them while watching TV. It doesn't matter if I get horribly distracted by, if I'm watching Thor Ragnarok's like my crack. I can't help watching that movie. And, oh, look, it's Loki. I need to look at Loki. So if I'm doing something simple, I can keep going back and forth. And
It's a good idea. Yeah, I need to get back to it. And I really am grateful for this because I think it will get me back at it.
well, thank you. That's actually, I feel very touched that I inspired you. Because I just do it to keep my hands busy.
Well, that's it. We need to keep our hands busy.
You're watching too much TV and your brain melts, right? So
Way too much TV.
And we're going to do it for another 6 months. So what can you do?
Morweena, something that I tried on Slippy Threads, because I played with silk for a little bit, was to use fisherman's knots to be able to tie them to each other.
Yeah, the funny thing is I don't have a problem with my silk slipping. It's just the tencel. I think the silk has better tooth. The tencel being an artificial fiber, it's rayon, right? It just doesn't seem to have any tooth to it, and it pulls. But like it's so pretty. Like this is nice and shiny, and it's got a good drape. But
Bamboo has the same problem.
And it's cheap too. That's the other thing. It's very inexpensive and cheap. Well, cheaper than silk, but nothing's nicer than working with silk. All right, I'm done. Anybody got anything else? Are we just
Actually, I have a question real quick.
Sure.
About advancing your warp. I use a Inkle loom as well, and I always have problems once my tension gets too high with getting it to move so that I can have my warp again or my shed. And I've been wanting to try a floor loom, and I can't imagine how you move it on such a big loom. Do you have any suggestions for that?
Well, on my particular floor Inkle loom, I have a big tension device, and I loosen it and I pull from the top. And if it's stuck for some reason, I just work it along. You may want to clamp your cards. I have never had a problem with my cards all collapsing. If your wood is not smooth enough, it can be hard to advance. So you need to make sure the pegs are nice and smooth. If they're too rough, it doesn't advance very well. It needs to, the pegs themselves need to be smooth so that the band flows over them when you pull them. But one thing, because I find on my floor Inkle, sometimes I have too much take up and it's getting really tight and I don't know what to do. Like I can't release the tension anymore, but I have to advance it more. I start flipping it off pegs.
Add a second tension paddle. I've seen models with multiple tension paddles.
So this one, I start it here, so the warp actually will be over this peg. And then when it starts running, and I start running out of room, I just move the warp from around this peg to around this one. And I just pick it up and move it.
Do you not have a tension paddle at the opposite end?
I just have just one.
Showing me? You got a slide, okay.
Yeah.
My Inkle has a paddle that flips out at where your hand is there. And I've also seen floor looms that have had multiple paddles.
Yeah,
so
mine only has one, but it's a big one. But sometimes I just start moving the warp off of pegs to make the warp distance shorter, and then that just readjusts my tension enough that I can keep going. I have to do a lot with my floor loom.
Thank you.
And again, I get my
the floor loom that multiple paddles works best on.
We have to go with what you can get, right? So I mean, not all of us have woodworking skills or woodworking shops.
Or woodworking husbands.
That too.
Yeah, my husband makes mine. So I'm just trying to think of some suggestions to help. So I can, because my loom only weaves about 3 yards, which is just not enough for larger projects. So
yeah, this one I had in my hand. It's about 3.3. So what I end up with is 3.3 meters or 3 meters ish. And then my big one, the warp is 5.5, or it was. It had a little accident and one of the pegs broke off. So I get like 4 to 5 meters off of it. I would like to get more, but I would need to spend a lot of money to have one custom made for me. I get mine from House Blue Dog, which is on Vancouver Island. They do my cards and my looms.
One of the things I did to help with that advancing the warp tension problem was I figured out which of the turning bars was the biggest issue, and I wrapped it in cardboard, which acts as sort of a lubricant. And that just made the entire problem go away. I only ever have that problem on a really thin silk warp. That's the only time I've ever had the issue. I think the silk just catches on the wood. So that seemed to solve the issue right away.
So how many cards are in a pack usually?
Like you mean if you buy these?
Yeah. Well, that or the wooden ones.
Oh, these ones come in sets of 12.
12, okay.
And they're super expensive, I'll be honest. They are not inexpensive. I like the small size.
Morweena had hers done by Sir Harold, who has a nice laser cutter.
Some people use plastic, whatever works for you. I like these because they're durable, but the other thing is this fits my hand really nicely.
Yeah.
I hate working with these. They're really big.
I've been looking at the little ones, but the price was sort of getting me.
Yeah, these are pretty expensive.
Wooden cards that if you have a lot of cards that it becomes unwieldy to turn because
these are brilliant for that. So if I'm doing a really wide band, I go back to my little playing cards. I like the size. These are cheap cards from the dollar store. And you know, a lot of people punch the holes themselves. I don't. I went to my local print shop, which luckily at the time my brother worked there. Go to a print shop, ask them to drill holes for you and cut it. They will charge you no more than $10. So then you get 52 cards for $1 and whatever the print shop charges you. But they shouldn't charge you much. They should maybe charge you $1 per hole and then another $1 for cutting it. So like $5, $10. They shouldn't be charging you any more that do not go to Staples because they don't know what they're doing.
And then it's consistent. The holes are all in the same spot.
Exactly.
Bingo.
And they can do a couple of different sizes because it's just based on the drill that they have. Because every print shop, the big ones, I don't mean a Staples, I mean a proper print shop, has a drill press, and a cutter. And so these cost me, well, they just cost me the $1 because my brother didn't charge me. I had to give him a beer. But these are brilliant.
And they're smooth. That's the biggest benefit of a print shop. You get nice, clean hole cuts.
Yeah. I mean, eventually they wear out. And particularly if you work with high tension, the holes start to tear. I haven't tried these ones. These are a little smaller. Sally gave these to me. Anya gave them to me. They're a little smaller. And if you're using thick yarns, maybe you want the thinner cards and maybe a little bit bigger. I warped something up the other day with this really thick knitting yarn. And the little wooden cards that I love, they're too small because it's just too fat and it just doesn't work very well. I should have used these guys. That's what fits your hands, right?
Yeah.
I made a whole pile out just out of cereal boxes.
Yeah.
Just use a rotary cutter and cut them up. I was just curious that your playing cards, I think you mentioned that when the side you cut, you just left the corners square.
Yes.
I know a lot of places you say make your own cards, round off all the corners. I never do.
No, I don't understand the point of doing that because the advantage to my thinking is now I have one side that's always consistent and I don't even need to look at my cards. I can feel where the corner is and I know if a single card is out of place.
Yeah, well, mine are all squared because, but I've never had a problem with needing to round the corners. I was curious because everyone seems to say that you have to round the corners.
Well, I think it stops it from catching, because sometimes your threads cross and they catch the cards.
Yeah.
And
I haven't had a super problem with that.
I have the problem occasionally with my wooden cards, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah, just curious because you're the first person I've run into that didn't bother.
Why bother? No, and for me, I'd rather know what's up and down than have all my edges smooth.
Mm-hmm.
I used these for years before I bought the wooden ones.
With the corners catching, I've used mostly playing card ones. I found that they caught the worst. Actually, I've rounded all my edges, but I found they caught the worst when I made them too close, the holes too close to the edge.
Makes sense. Yeah, these are nicely far in. And same with these guys.
Yeah, I made another set and moved the holes farther in and it completely fixed the problem.
That's good to know.
Yeah, I've woven with these once or twice and I just hate them. You don't have enough room in your working space on your ink loom to use these guys.
I enjoy the smaller wooden cards. It's definitely an investment. And when I was doing a lot of tablet weaving, I would sort of every summer I would get another 12 or inherit, and I would sort of cobble it together. But once you're used to having them in your hand, you can see why period cards were so little. Like it's okay, this actually feels really good
I really want to try
to
some
work with.
plain ones, but that's an investment I just can't afford to do right now.
Those big ones, I just find them too. They're too big for my hands. They're too hard to work with. I can't turn them properly.
And if you're doing what I said with pulling your salvage cards out, now you've run out of working space in your loom, right? So, you know, if this is your ink loom and you have your salvage cards forward, if you're using those great big cards, you just don't have enough real estate in here to do all your work. You're not advancing all the time, and it just I don't like them, but they're cheap and readily available.
Morweena, have you tried? I know I've spoken with Murphy, who's one of the authors of the.
I love him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge. Yeah. I fangirl about it all the time. But I know the last couple of patterns, and I haven't tried them yet. They have ones where instead of turning your pack twice, like doing turning, and then bringing them back together, you're actually doing some crazy stuff where it's like turning one pack half a turn and then the same pack 2 turns back. Have you tried any of that stuff?
But that's one of those patterns right there.
Yeah, I'd love to try. I've talked about what's his name, Finn, down in Oregon. We've talked about doing every pattern in that book and leading up to those more complicated
Or
ones.
just this bandits too.
Oh, it's totally period. I was just curious if you tried it yet.
I haven't tried it, and it's one of those things where I mean to, where I keep working my way through this book, and then I go back to the beginning because I don't know about the rest of you, but I find with COVID my brain's not as sharp as it used to be. I spend all my time talking to cats, right? So I don't have the focus. But you know, that's a good point. Next time I have a couple days off, I should work on some of the more complicated.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I would definitely be curious on your take.
Like I keep doing the simple ones because you can just bang them out and watch Thor. Who doesn't want to watch Thor? So
And some days,
I'm at the Hemsworth and Hiddleston problem. I have a serious problem now.
and some days you just want simple.
I have done one of the moderate ones. It's actually on Wolfland Step Up Guard. But it wasn't the one with the half turns. It was this one. It's not hard, it's just not twist neutral. But you see all the steps in the pattern. It's got quite a few steps. And some of the patterns in this book have pages of steps. Guido, aren't you working your way through this one?
I am. I've done some of the ones that require a half turn with mixed success, unfortunately, which is why I haven't posted any of them yet. Once I get one that I'm actually happy with, I'm still working on the technique.
Like look at this one. So this is 1, 2, 3. That's one set of turns for the pattern.
I've done that one. That's not fun. I'm just going to say that's fun.
Have you tried Murphy's new book? I don't know if is it translated from Finnish to English yet? I don't know.
No, the English isn't available yet. No.
Okay.
I'm watching. I'm waiting.
This is the most complicated one I've done.
Oh, that one. Yeah, it's lovely.
That's
beautiful. I love that. But that's my introduction to 3-1 twill.
I need to do that stuff. I need to stop. I do some. I just sort of. I'm like a machine. I just keep making really simple ones and then trying to sell them for pin money.
Guido, can I see that one again? I missed it.
Sure. I just have to find it again. I've done it a couple times. There we go.
Oh, wow. Cool.
If anybody seriously buy this book, it is the most amazing book. It starts really simple, 3 forward, 3 back, and then 5 forward, 5 back. It like starts really, really simple, and then it gets into these crazy complicated ones.
So I have a 3-1 twill here. This is a brocaded 3-1 twill. So I'm trying to figure that one out myself. It's not the best thing in the world.
For that, like I said, I have the Lily Grove, and those are really highly regarded books. I just,
I'm waiting for mine to come.
I have a scrap kicking around where I've done the little dog pattern, and I've got like 2 dogs, and then I break them again. I need to focus and
All the things.
I've sort of buried myself into brocades right now, so.
But this stuff is just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I know you can't really see it, but this stuff is gorgeous. And also, it's all taken from a 16th century, 15th century stole.
Okay, because it looks sort of South American.
These elements in this book are from German. They're from a German ecclesiastical stole.
Cool.
Which book is this again?
This is the Lily Grove, and there's also the Lily Grove 2. And she also has a book called Tablets at Work, and the author's name is Claudia Wolny. And she also hangs out on the Historical Tablet Weaving page on Facebook.
Can you drop the ISDNs of those 2 books into chat, or when you get a chance?
Or actually, because these books do not even bother buying them from Amazon.
Okay.
You'll pay 3 times as much as you would if you bought them directly from the publisher, because they're limited interest books. So same thing with Appleseeds and Foxnoses. You should buy it directly from the.
I bought mine from Claudia on Etsy.
Yeah, she has an Etsy shop. And you can also, another really good book on Etsy you can get for about $15 because it's a PDF is Ecclesiastical Pomp and Circumstances, which is all brocaded bands.
I have that book. That's a fantastic book.
And it's like $15 on Etsy, right? Like it's amazing. Oh, there's my old cat. So yeah, Appleseeds and Foxnoses is $200 on Amazon.
What?
Or you can buy it directly from the finished publisher for $30, and that includes shipping.
Wow.
Amazon is not a deal.
I was, it's funny, this morning I needed to get some lime green embroidery floss for a modern project. And I was like, okay, why don't I just look on Amazon? So at Michael's, it's 80 cents, 79 cents, $11 to buy embroidery floss on Amazon. And I was like, oh, come on, man. Like who is spending $11 on something you can get for 80 cents? I was like, this is too much.
So I put the link in for Appleseeds and Foxnoses, and now I am putting in the link for Claudia Wolny's website. So she has a number of books. Tablets at Work is really well regarded. The only thing is her page is in German. The other thing that's neat about her page is you can download single patterns. Like she's got a couple of sort of tester patterns in double weave and 3/112, so you can try them out. And she also has a PDF on cards, like so you can print out your own cards. She has an Etsy shop, or you can buy directly from her publisher, and that's in the chat.
Morweena, I just want to say how beautifully clear this presentation was. Some of these things are very difficult to explain verbally or typing out some of the difficulties, and I just thought you did such a beautiful job. It was so concise,
Thank
so
you.
clear.
Yeah.
And the fact that people ended it and were engaged and asking questions, I just thought it showed like you did a great job tonight, and we really appreciate.
Thank you, because when I talk
that you came in, you were just great today.
Tricky because you're talking and you don't know if anyone's getting it.
It's such a weird format. I do the same. Yeah, like you're giving a talk, you're like I can't see anybody, and hopefully people are. Yeah, I know, but.
And I stressed out because like, oh my God, am I getting too complicated? Is it not complicated enough?
Really good, and it was really clear.
Yeah. Excellent.
So much better in the original format, which I intended, which was a bunch of us sitting around a table at Canterbury Fair and bringing out our looms and just weaving away and going, well, have you tried turning your salvage cards all forward? Have you tried flipping your card?
I thought it was beautiful. I thought your PowerPoint was great, and the fact that you could bring things and you showed, this is a shed, and I thought it worked really beautifully this way.
And I think it's important to always show, and Brianna pointed this out to me a couple years ago, always show your bad work.
Oh yes. Absolutely. People forget.
I
People
will
think.
never throw this thing out, even though it's
Yeah.
Keep
absolutely.
some.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't show that part before.
Oh, I did. No, this is my.
No, the part that goes boom.
Oh yeah, it's just a mess. This
I
is
love you
actually
just on that,
from
Atan. Look at
Candace
that extra
Crawford book.
fail you did there.
This is from the Candace Crawford book, and it's just like, wow, that's awful. And I'm gonna brag and show this one because I like this one a lot.
Oh, there you go. Oh, it's a little. Okay, cool, beautiful.
That was my entry in the Tier A&S with the linen that I grew the woad and dyed the linen, and you judge this one. Hey guys, hey, sorry, young cat's bugging the old cat. She's hissing. My poor old cat. My poor old cat.
Thanks very much, Morweena. This has been great. A very good reminder and some great new tips for me.
Yep.
I'm glad people enjoyed it.
Hey, Atan, should we back on the idea we were talking about some kind of textile-y thing in the barony?
I think it would be great to this kind of loose discussion we're having at the end would be really fun, because I like the formal talks and they're really important. But maybe what we used to try and do at Arts and Sciences, just sit around and each work on a project and talk as we work, might be a fun thing to do. Are other
We used to
people
call
interested?
it needle threaders or stitch and bitch.
Yeah, I've always hated stitch and bitch.
Needle threaders is good. I like that one.
Needle threaders is good.
Needle threaders was what we called it back in the day.
In
And
the
it was
barony?
generally once every week, once every couple weeks, and it was bring whatever you're working on.
You know what's funny? I was speaking to Banjo this morning. I was speaking to Banjo on the phone, and he was saying the barony used to have theme nights, and he wants to do a cooking one, and he went all on, and I was like, I have no interest in doing a cooking night. Go for it, Banjo, or Surfin, I guess his new name is. But I would be interested in a textile night where I could sit and do my project.
Yeah.
And you could do your project. It wouldn't necessarily even need to be a period. Like, it could just be whatever. Like, I think I'd be into that.
They were doing that on the Sable Weavers webpage for a while. They were doing Weaving Wednesdays where they were just hanging out weaving. The problem is, if you're all on your floor looms, bang, 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 and you can't see each other. But because most of the Sable Weavers people are doing textile weaving.
Yeah.
I
needle threaders was portable projects.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the idea, like, especially right now with COVID, the idea of like, how do we strengthen our barony and then invite people in? I like the idea of doing something baronial where the door is open. If you're from anywhere, come here, but having it be barony focused is kind of appealing to me.
Well, I mean, we do have the Arts and Sciences nights, and everyone's welcome to come to those. And we basically do just that. We hang around, we chat, and we work on our projects, and we talk about what we're working on. It's informal and it's social, as opposed to being a formal, structured sort of thing.
Because the ones I've been to have been themed.
The Arts and Sciences online nights?
Sorry?
The online Arts and Sciences nights?
No, I'm thinking of the ones before COVID.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm talking about like right now.
Yeah, Ariel.
And I'd been to Arts and Sciences nights when Mona was in the barony, and they weren't themed usually. It was like half and half. Like 1 week it would be themed or a class, and then the next week it would be social hangout casual.
I like the idea of having the camera on and we're working on whatever, and I can walk away and get a drink and it doesn't matter, or I'm gonna do a modern cross stitch and it doesn't matter, nobody cares, like that kind of thing.
Isn't that
where
what
we're just being together?
Event is like?
That is what our Arts and Sciences nights are.
So when are the Arts and Sciences nights?
That is an excellent question, and I do not know the answer because we can't seem to unify on where we post what. So
that's the problem, because I've never been able to hook into it.
Yeah, Ariel Rivera is, I mean, if we were all posting them all to the baronial page, then we would know. But Ariel Rivera is, I believe, our current Arts and Sciences officer. And she is the person to ask, and she's not here tonight, unfortunately.
Well, I know Jure has now very kindly posted Lions Dens into the future on the baronial website, so you don't even need to be on Facebook. You can be on the baronial website. Right. Maybe that would be a place that she could post.
Yeah, absolutely. I will make a note to poke her and say, hey, everyone who was at Lions Den was like, we should have that. I'm like, we do.
She does post them in the Lionsgate forum as an event. Absolutely.
Yeah. But sometimes it's like the day before. as opposed to like with 2 weeks notice.
Yeah,
So,
and that's just because people are busy and they think, oh yeah, I forgot, and then it gets lost in if there's a lot of chatter. Like obviously Thursday, Friday, a lot of people were concerned about Melissa.
yeah.
So I don't know if everyone can see the chat right now, but the Baronial Seneschal has just weighed in to let us know that there is Baronial Council on the 20th, and they're going to be discussing the ANS night in council.
Awesome.
He says ominously. No, I'm just kidding.
After we've all watched the inauguration of the new president.
Oh,
That'll be
Which
good.
one
Yeah,
goes
that's
out?
the day though.
Will be drama free and peaceful, loving exchange of power, as we all know.
But that's during the afternoon, and then they have a big. Well, they would have a big party at night.
Just try and be sober for council. That's all we're saying.
I'm not Seneschal. I don't need to be sober for council anymore. What are you
I'm
talking
not
about?
leaving the house. I'm not
Not
driving
now.
a car. I'll be drinking
changed
if I want
now.
to.
When I was Seneschal, I had to be, but I don't now. That's now
Yeah.
Sheree and Kevin have to be.
I think that applies.
You will be muted.
Have to drive to be there.
Okay.
There's definitely not going to be any coups at council.
There will be no. Are you sure?
I'm 100% sure. I believe the last ANS night that was regularly run was on Wednesdays.
Mhm.
So that's probably what we're looking at for the coming dates. But everything has sort of been on hold over the holiday season. So come on the 20th, the third Wednesday of the month.
Well, I ask a simple question. Do you guys know what time it's usually at, just in terms of us organizing bedtime?
Yeah.
ANS?
I can tell you
ANS.
exactly when council is. 7:30.
Council's at 7:30, and then where's the link to council posted?
I will be posting that shortly.
And you post that at the Baronial.
Yeah, it should be on the Baronial webpage, and it should be on
Okay.
the Facebook stuff. This month, we're looking at shifting over to Zoom instead of Teams, which has been traditionally problematic.
Okay.
Yay. I like Zoom a lot better than Teams.
Me too. Baronial Council should be on the Lionsgate page because it's hosted by the Barony and then shared to the forum. And then the ANS night probably is in the forum because that way Ariel can do her own event.
What's on the Lionsgate page? Okay.
Yeah, I believe the ANS nights are on the Lionsgate page as well. But I just wanted to pop in with that, say hi to everyone. Thanks for running this, boss. And I hope you all have a good week. Don't forget, there's another Lions Den between now and council. So next Sunday, the Scaralian Saga. I'm very excited about that one as well. So come back in a week, everyone.
Can I throw in one more thing?
Yes, it's going to be. I've actually been speaking to the speaker tonight. He is very interesting. He's going to be very interesting. He is he's Cherokee. He has a Cherokee persona. He's from Kansas. He's been playing in the SCA for 30 years.
Cool.
Yeah, really interesting guy. Yeah, and I'm excited to see what he has to say. And I think I was talking to Jure about having another panel discussion in May. So hopefully we can have him back to in future. Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks.
Lionsdale was also trying to host a ANS night, but they kept running into conflicts with different dates. So if the Lionsgate one doesn't work for you, if you touch base with Elspeth in Lionsdale, maybe that time might be more, because I know 7 o'clock is problematic for you, Kiva, because it's
Well, I mean, it doesn't need to be on my schedule. I just need
not the only person with small children, right?
I mean, but it could also be like what Banjo was saying and Kushag about theme nights, like because the cooks maybe want to talk about cooking and we want to talk about this, and so maybe one ANS night isn't really gonna cut the mustard in terms
the only
of
person with small kids, and so that definitely gets noise for a lot of people.
Oh, fair enough.
Well,
I
let's face
do
it,
know-
back in the day, we were a lot fewer people, but we did have, the Confraternity of St. Lawrence did cooking, the needle threaders did needleworking and textiles of all sorts. We had minstrels for doing bardic type stuff. There are 2-3 fighting practices a week, and that was 40 years ago.
Well,
we were not anywhere near the number of people in the barony we are now.
Well, before COVID, Cook's Night was happening at Tanique's, and it was well attended.
Yep, usually 5 to 6 people there, sometimes more.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, that was great.
That's where you get to try out all the recipes and get, feedback.
Some of us had our own private cooks night. We did it every couple of months.
Yeah, we know, you selfish girl.
Yes, I know. And we would get together and we would do great stuff in my common room. And that was
only a problem for me because you'd post pictures and they'd look so tasty.
That was like me and Margaret and Agnes.
Yeah.
And, God, I can't remember Aaron's SCA name.
Aaron.
Aaron, Sergeant Aaron.
Yeah.
And Lyric. And we would get together and make dishes and eat them, and that was good. And we did it at an event once too, but just there's Lionsgate Champions. We decided to go cook in the corner while y'all competed for championships.
Well, actually, that whole cooking at the event thing, I want to say Collegium. I think it was Collegium this year, or not this year, last year. We were there, and Eduardo hosted a campfire cooking weekend, all weekend. They set up a tent outside, and they cooked food over the fire. And they talked about different grains and different vegetables, and you could just wander by, and there was something hot cooking, and you could try something cool. And it was really, really neat. And he was really excited about doing it at camping events this year, which obviously we're delayed a year.
Yeah, we were using the propane fire pit because
it is 100% something we are going to do, because it was a great way to get people interested in medieval cooking at events.
Yeah, we just didn't want to burn down Morweena Park, so we were using the propane fire pit.
Oh yeah, sure.
And somebody mentioned in one of the salon chats yesterday at 12th night that what she does, I think it was Spike, they have a little group, and they all make their own dish, their own period dish with period ingredients, and then they all meet on Zoom at such a time, and they all eat their own meal and discuss, I made this, and this was my steps, and this is what I did. Look at my food.
Nice.
I thought that sounded brilliant.
I agree.
I just had dinner delivered.
And that way you don't have to worry about food allergies and sensitivities, and I have weird hang-ups about other people touching my food,
Well, Elvina is a very good cook and very knowledgeable about period recipes, but immense allergies.
Exactly. That's why that little thing was working well for them, is they don't have to worry about food sensitivities because you're making your own food. And then just talking about it. Nerding.
Well, Eduardo taught me how to make chicken cordon bleu on camp stoves up at Clinton one year. And that has now become one of our special dishes if we have company over.
Nice. We made some interesting recipes in our little private medieval cooks group. So we made like cream chicken and boiled neeps. We made actually some really interesting stuff.
I'm looking at Wednesday nights and going, oh, that's the night I worked until 7:15, 7:30. Even, online. I've been, I suppose, privileged enough to not have lost a day's work thanks to COVID.
It is definitely hard to go from working all day to wanting to socialize on Zoom, for sure. You want to, especially when you've been. I totally get that. That's why I don't do a lot of it, because my computer, Zoom's on my computer, not my laptop. So I have to do it in my little home office space. And on weekends, I want to stay away from my home office. But I'm here because I'm on call.
I'm at work right now, so to speak. But I did find with what Atan was saying too, is that COVID has also, because we've all had to learn a lot of new things over the last 10 months. Often by the time we're finished working, we're done. And, I admire that you can actually find the energy to weave watching TV, because not me, man. I'm done.
I'm so used to being so busy by choice. So I was talking to somebody on one of the salons yesterday. She's also an event steward type nerd. And, we were just about to do Canterbury Fair, and we had just finished investiture. And so I'm go, go, go. Oh, I have nothing to do. And, it's just like literally nothing to do. And particularly the last 8 weeks, you're not supposed to go out unless it's people in your bubble and people, my friends who are also, I'm single, so it's just me. And my friends have elderly parents or grandkids or kids that they need to prioritize. And so that's important. So a lot of times staring at my own four walls. So a lot of weaving, or I just did some garments for Natalia up in Prince George, and just keep busy. I don't have the dog to look after too, which is another thing. So
definitely weird, especially that first little bit of COVID where we have 3 little kids, and it just goes all the time, and it's just completely exhausting. And then reading about people with this space, they're reading all the time and they're picking up new hobbies, and it's just like we are experiencing very different pandemics right now. Like we haven't had a babysitter since March.
I remember
it's very different. We're all in the same boat, but the boat looks different.
Oh yeah, I remember Alf joking about, I had 15 minutes with nobody touching me.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I'm
like, it's a thing.
The last person touched me.
Posted that to the storm, to the web. They said it's not that we're all in the same boat. We're all weathering the same storm.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, very much.
That,
and they're
really
and everybody's having their own challenges. It's not like I'm not saying I have it worse than anybody, but we're all
No, it's
we all have challenges for sure, and they're all different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, nobody's is any better or worse for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find very reassuring about how we've managed to use technology to connect again is that we are able to keep each other company, inspire and assist and teach and learn using this media. And I mean, I live with lots of people, so I see people all the time. It's not a problem for me. But I know there are people who are really struggling with staying connected and feeling like they still have friends. And I think the face-to-face aspect has been very helpful for the mental health of quite a few of us. So I'm really grateful for Lions Dens. I think you've done a really great thing for our Barony.
Thank you. We were originally.
I am feeling a lot better since I've been able to start doing this, because I was feeling very isolated.
Oh, I'm so glad. I was thinking about that when we weren't going to do a Lions Den on the 27th because everyone's going to be with their family and their friends, and then the second lockdown happened, and then it was like, why don't we do something on the 27th? But like I would get like messages from people being like thank you, like I don't have anyone to be with at Christmas, and so being with the Barony was really nice, and it made it feel like, I don't know, it was just really nice. It was nice to feel like a part of something. And I'm always amazed when I approach people. Everyone. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
What Morweena was saying about dinner is that's what we did at Christmas, because as a family, we're very close knit. And normally we would all be together for Christmas dinner. Good night, Guido. And what we actually ended up doing was I cooked the turkey and the dressing and the gravy. Bryony did the neeps. Fiona did the potatoes. Dana and Travis did the Brussels sprouts. We all put them in containers. And then Fiona and I collected and we delivered them all on Christmas Eve. So that we all had the same meal in our different households.
That's amazing.
That's such a great idea.
Not at the same time because of, but that's how our family coped with not being together.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So it's
well, and when the meal, when the communal meal is such a big part of the holiday, I mean, you have two choices. You can go, oh, it's impossible, we're just stuck with it, or you can go, let's see what we can do, you know. And I think that's brilliant. That's really smart. I'm glad you guys got to that. Oh, and I wanted to say, Kushag, since I can see you, thank you for posting the video of you guys singing the Christmas carols. That was wonderful.
That was Brynja's idea, and I was more than happy to go along with it. And we roped Dana in as well, and you know, she had difficulties with the kids that night, and we were sitting around waiting for her to arrive, and she actually phoned and said, "Oh, have you already done it?" And we could hear she was almost in tears. We said, "We'll do it again. You come over, we'll do it again." And it made it a lot better. Hello, Woodge. Hello, Woodgie. And it gave the three of us a chance to do some music together, because we haven't been able to do that in months.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's another communal need that we're missing.
I could tell that you guys were thrilled to be singing together again. There's a magic to it, and it was obvious.
If you could have heard the rain outside. The original thought was to go up to Fiona's and go into her nice big backyard, put out the propane fire and do it that way.
Yeah.
But it was raining so hard that we went no and just did it out in the carport.
One of the things I've been enjoying too in the SCA, I don't know if you guys have been watching about kids' birthdays. People have really, like, you post, okay, my kid's got a birthday. There's a heck of a lot of people with and without kids that are writing cards to children they've never met, so that kids who can't have birthday parties are getting a whole like wave of cards on their birthday. I think that's just a really beautiful thing to watch.
Great.
It's lovely. It's been beautiful. Like, we posted for Maya's birthday, she got, I think, 40 cards in the mail. 3/4 of the first people she's never met, but that she's this little kid, and they're full of stickers, and people really put a lot of effort in, and I just thought it was so sweet. Anyway,
Doing that for Matilda and Rachel, but I looked at the birthday cards and they all made me want to throw up. I know that they would probably like them, but they were just like, ugh.
Yeah.
So Freya's mom and Freya being mad about the consistently icky pastel rainbow bright quality of baby clothes and things. Freya's mom's gone hog wild, bought 40 onesies in varying sizes and a whole bunch of dye, and has been dyeing goth and swamp witch and weird themes in really icky colors, going, I'm gonna make him dress like a turtle. Oh, now he's a superhero. Okay. I'm so happy about it. I want to give her some blank t-shirts and go, make me a turtle.
One of my coworkers has children about the same age as my grandchildren, and she posts little conversations with them every once in a while. And she sent up her eldest son upstairs to his dad, who is battling cancer and has been for quite some time. Just say, did ask your dad if he wants a grilled cheese sandwich for his lunch. And off he went upstairs, and he came back downstairs and said, and she says, well, and he goes, well, what was his answer? Well, you didn't tell me I had to answer. I had to memorize his answer and tell you. So, I mean, with it was gone. He got the answer and he came back downstairs and it just continued on what he was doing. It makes gives me kid things, even though I don't have the kids with me at all.
So my 2-year-old tonight, little Kelly, came up to me and he hurt his foot. He's like, oh, mommy, my foot owie. And I was like, oh, would you like a kiss? He's like, yes, mommy, please. And so I gave him a little kiss. He's like, no, mommy, I want a present. Clearly with fond memories of Christmas. Like, I got the kiss. I better go all in here.
Give him a thimble.
Yeah. Now I want a present. Like,
some laundry.
Alice.
No. He's really cute though. I know, you're just like, oh, if I had a present ready, you probably would get one.
That's what stickers are for.
Yeah, right. Oh, he probably would have gone for a sticker. It would have been acceptable.
I literally keep a stash of gold stars and rainbow stars at the Greenwood. So when I'm teaching and I tell a kid, that's a gold star, they're like, okay. And then they come into the barn and they're like, so where's my gold star? I'm like, I'd better have some stickers.
I read a really interesting article.
When they get 5, they get an ice cream or a rainbow sticker.
I read a really interesting, I think it was in the New York Times about men and motivating men, and that men liked points. And so they're like getting points. And so I was reading this article, and this is what I think Chris and I were Alf and I were just dating. And he did something, and he was like, he mowed the lawn, and I was like, oh, you get points. And he was so excited. He was like, yeah, I got points. Like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, this is just nonsense. But he was like, yes.
So,
and I was like, okay, well, our article is correct then. Just like points.
There is, in fact, a whole behavioral theory of gamification. And you can
go on
into a game. And you can create levels and XP that you need to level up. And then you get level bonuses. And it doesn't have to be real. There doesn't have to be anything tangible. It can literally just be You leveled up, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you got to fight the
He was
boss.
he was all into it, and it was just a random thing I threw out after reading this article. But he was. I remember it worked for a long
genuinely
time.
works. It
I think
hits
he's kind of immune to it now, though. I think he's sort of cottoned on that the points aren't really adding up to much these days.
Well, there has to be some kind of reward.
Yeah,
Well,
fair
the thing
enough.
is also you can lose spousal points.
Yes. Oh.
Amy and Harold do this all the time. You gain spousal points and lose spousal points on that one.
Okay, fair enough.
So the thing about that is that when you're playing a game, you're never losing XP. You never take an XP.
It's true.
Downside. So
True.
no matter what you do, you're always gaining XP. It's just you're gaining it at a different rate. So you're like, oh, well, it's double XP weekend. If you want to get the chores done, you're going to level up really fast. It does work. There is science behind it.
Oh my goodness.
My friend always said that if you wanted men to do the vacuuming, you have to build a ride-on vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. It's funny, like if you'd asked like 18-year-old me, I would have been like, that's really sexist. And now 42-year-old me is like, yeah, kind of, yeah, it makes sense.
It is sexist because we live in a sexist society. So it is sexist. It's just also real.
I when I was first my first year out of high school, I was going to school in the States, and in my freshman English class, one of the essays we were commenting on or asked to write a thing on was something called The Politics of Housework.
Fun.
And so we're talking now back in the late 70s. And she's saying men like to do chores where when it's done, it's done. There's a feeling of accomplishment because it's been finished and it doesn't have to be done again. She says, the women tended to get the repetitive chores, like the washing and the dishes and the cooking and the shopping, that as soon as it's done, it has to be done again.
Well, and it can be paused too. I think that's the thing too, is the jobs by female-bodied people tend to be jobs that can be stopped, such as weaving, and gotten back to.
That's Curtis. I've never really put that together before, but you're right.
It's not my. This is like a thing in anthropology. I can't.
Very cool.
Credit.
Yeah. We found this out when the twins were in kindergarten, and I autocrated a 2-day demo at an elementary school in North Van. So Curtis took those 2 days off, and he took care of the kids. They got me up to the demo, came and got me, sort of thing. But he came home. He had all sorts of plans on things that were going to get done during those 2 days that he had off.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came to got me at the end of the first day. He goes, "How do you get anything done?" I said, "I chop everything up into 1.5 to 2 hour blocks. Because get the kids up, get off to morning school, then you go pick them up for lunch, and and then back for afternoon school, and then pick them up from afternoon school, and then you've got about 1.5 or 2 hours till he gets home for supper, and that's supper time, and then there's another 2 hours till we go to bed, and it's like chunk, 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 chunk."
Have asked me before, like, well, how do you get so much stuff done? Because like I was running, I had the dog, and I was learning how to play the bass, and I was weaving. Really simple answer: I don't have kids.
Yep.
That is the answer. There's nobody else begging for my time every time I turn around.
It's amazing the different life choices on my wall. I just kind of love it. There's so many different ways to be, and I try to keep perspective when I see friends excelling in their hobby that have more time, and just sort of try and celebrate them for what they can do.
Well, that was just it. This friend has kids, and she was sort of beating herself up, saying, I can't do this. I'm like, you got a whole different thing going on there that I don't, so you can't compare my lifestyle to yours because, and I also reminded her, I don't mean to make it sound negative to me. My life is empty. There's no one to come and kiss me when I'm sad, or that I have to kiss when they're sad. So it's a different trade-off, right? So their life is very full. Mine is full of stuff.
Sounds nice though.
All different.
It's just like from my edge of the fence.
Peering over. Like,
yeah. There's more space. A lot less mess. Oh well.
My house is always messy too, but it's my fault.
Even that sounds really nice.
Well, it used to be the dog, because my dog would make a mess. dirty paw prints and fluff everywhere.
Oh, Curtis says the cats are to blame the house on. No matter if it's not them, it's their fault. That's what they're for.
That's adorable.
There's a reason I love him so much.
So, Morweena, do you think you'll ever see yourself getting another dog?
Not for a while. I'd like to maybe like be free and travel and go to events and not have to worry about trucking a dog around with me.
Mm.
And also, grumpy old cat does not need another dog in her life.
Fair.
To be gone. She's 16 years old. Though I have to admit, over the Christmas break, I ran across this dog on Pet Finder, and it was this young male husky that likes cats.
Oh, tempting.
And of course, Ruby was a Malamute. It's like husky Malamute. Okay, no, more energy on one, but it's half the size.
Right.
But no, I have a credit with WestJet from a trip I canceled. That would be
Curtis and I get to
have
take
a
a
dog.
trip to Newfoundland at some point.
Oh,
We were
fun.
supposed to go for a union meeting last July, which of course got canceled.
Yeah, I had a
So
plane
it said
ticket to
union
London.
meeting is still going to happen sometime. And damn it, we're still going.
I'd like to go to Hawaii.
Heck of a lot of traveling.
Who'd like to go to Hawaii?
I would. I just want to
Oh,
go to
really?
Hawaii. 5-hour flight, palm trees, snorkeling,
Volcanoes.
drinks, volcanoes, rare birds. I'm
Oh my
there.
God, so many bugs. I'm sure they have
That is
really interesting
perfect.
lichens and mushrooms.
They don't have a lot of mushrooms. I haven't really looked into it, but they do have frogs. How did they get there? I'm very curious about this. How did frogs get to Hawaii? I don't know. I feel like I should know, but I don't.
You dye things with frogs.
Pardon me?
How do you dye things with frogs?
Not everything has
nothing
to
to
be
do with
dyed
dyeing
with
material.
but I just mean
No.
you have a volcanic piece of earth that came out of the seamount, out of the ocean floor in the middle of the ocean. The birds flew
Ocean
there.
ra-
How did the frogs get there?
Vegetative rafting.
Or dropped a frog.
Yes, so.
Birds
Must be a pretty big
frog
raft
eggs on them.
that are super
That's
delicate and
true.
can't be in salt water. It's one of those, I don't even want to Google it. I just want for the rest of my life just to have this wonderment. Where do the frogs in Hawaii come from? Nobody really knows anyway.
Is an animal expert in Australia. He could probably tell you.
Probably.
Sometimes it's good just not to know.
He's
I
a
agree.
bug expert.
I
But that's all animals.
I'm a believer in keeping that last mountain unclimbed. I think there should be mountains that you don't climb in life. I'm okay with that.
I expect they were introduced by French. I'm curious.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up. Get her out of here. Yeah, no, maybe.
The question
French.
you've always got to ask is it a native species?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I haven't really looked into it. I just, but then somebody would have had to brought them like in their luggage or
The
on a.
minute you get off the plane, you're like, okay, where do the frogs come from?
Yeah.
Because there are also a lot of cats in Hawaii, but
Yeah.
you know exactly.
Oh yeah,
how they
yeah.
got
And I
there.
mean, Hawaii's been fairly well screwed over by introduced species. I don't know. It's a mystery.
Curtis
I'm happy.
actually told a story to his nephew about the aliens coming in rocket ships and yeah, that were shaped like volcanoes. You could tell they were actually rockets because they sometimes blew up, right? Yeah. His brother was really ticked with him for a while there because it messed with Robin's mind. But I think he had something about the French and the frogs coming in those alien rocket ships. He tied it all in. He made it sound very plausible. If there's volcanoes, then of course there must be frogs, according to my husband's logic.
Yeah, my dad used to tell us stories. Like we would go to the Okanagan and there would be hills that would have like little ridges, and he would talk about like sidewinders that had like shorter feet on one side, and they'd always go around the hills the same way. And he had a whole bunch of them, and we just believed it. Oh, like the snakes that would bite their tails and would go like hoop snakes, I think he called them.
Cool.
My dad was full of nonsense. And like seagulls, he'd be like, "Oh, the gray seagulls are the girl seagulls." Let me tell you, that's not right. The gray seagulls are juvenile seagulls. Like, full of
My dad
nonsense.
was a fountain of bullshit too.
Yeah.
And he was a great storyteller. I got it from somewhere, but my sister for Christmas gave me a USB that is recordings of him from like 30 years ago, just talking, jawing over coffee and smokes while they were playing poker. And I'm like, I cannot wait to hear what he's saying because I remember some really elaborate stories. And yeah.
My father used to do that too.
Hoop snakes and sidewinders.
I like the hoop.
Of course,
There's a book in there.
my uncles do the same sort of thing. My uncle Dan, who was an actor, did the Night Before Christmas for our kids once. My father was dead by that point, so Uncle Dan read The Night Before Christmas, a la Uncle Dan. It was Night Before Christmas and all through the guppy herds, and it sort of went along that line. Everything was totally changed and morphed, and it was, we nearly peed ourselves.
We grew up kind of okie smoky poor, and my mom would, like every Christmas, my parents would make us gifts. And one year, the year I turned 6, my dad made a puppet theater, and my mom made puppets, paper mache puppets. So she had Punch and Judy, which, I mean, we were kids and we weren't raised British, so we had no idea what Punch and Judy were about. And a Santa, and then an elf, and I can't remember the elf's name, and our horse, Bob. And Bob didn't have moving mouth parts, so he was just a horse head on a sledgehammer. And they wrote a Christmas play about the horse biting the elf in the butt, and then referring to the rule book and saying, no, it's my job, I'm the guard horse, so I'm allowed to bite you in the butt if I don't know you. You're not a member of my family, so I bit you in the butt. And this stuck with me. I never read the play again. We never heard it again. Mom never recited it again. But from the age of like 5.5, I remember it like so clearly.
Jury's going,
how long are they gonna keep going?
Brain is going.
No, this is amazing. It's good. It's great because this is where we're getting the social connection, where we're getting the.
Unfortunately, my cocktails are empty and there's nothing more.
I went in to pick up my medication yesterday and found that London Drugs has raspberry Coke.
Ooh.
I was drinking a Manhattan. I shouldn't drink too many of those.
I shouldn't drink too many of these either. So.
Well, Manhattan is Scotch, vermouth, and bitters.
What does vermouth taste like?
It's sweet vermouth. So there's dry vermouth, which is the white, and there's sweet vermouth, which tastes like sherry, kind of.
Okay. Yeah, sherry's probably a good approximation.
So yeah, it's unfortunately I use some good single malt. A lot of people use bourbon, but I have a lot of Scotch, so I use Scotch. I shouldn't drink.
So you have Jeray's attention. He knows where you live.
Use Scotch in
how
a
much
mixed
Scotch I
drink?
have. It's not like, do you remember? Okay, Kiva remembers this when Kiva and Alf moved to South Africa, and we had 12th night at the Pink Palace, and he had that big box of Scotch and bourbon. It's not like that. I got maybe 13 bottles of Scotch.
We have quite a few. Neither of us is really supposed to be drinking.
I don't buy any of it. It's all presents.
Yeah, ours is mostly presents too.
Yeah, it sucks to be me.
My mom used to like martinis, and while I would drink gin and tonic, so we knew we'd always have gin. She used to keep a little buffering bottle of vermouth in my fridge. So people would go in and go, "What's this pill bottle doing in your fridge?" Oh, and that's my mom's vermouth. She like hers very dry, so a pill bottle lasted a couple of years.
Well, yeah, I can't drink a lot of Scotch because it's Scotch, so that's why it lasts so long. I love it, but I can't drink too much of it. You don't want to drink too much of it.
No, we've got a decent selection here, but I can always tell it's been a tough night when the little Scotch glass appears next to the sink. That it's because normally I don't know, I guess we just don't drink very much of it.
No, you sip it, you savor it.
Yeah, but if there's like Bailey's in the house or something, then it goes.
Well, Bailey's, once you open it, it needs to go. Otherwise, it goes bad.
Yeah, exactly. It's for the better. It's for the good.
Can't waste it. No, it's way too expensive.
It would spoil.
Oh, Curtis, he came home from work last Wednesday and immediately had to go into a Zoom union meeting. So he went downstairs and disappeared. And I thought, well, I'll wait till he gets back up before I start talking dinner, because who knows how long this is going to last. And at about 7:45, he finally came upstairs. I said, what would you like for supper? He says, well, I've got about a third of a bottle of wine left if you're interested. And I went, the meeting was that bad that he actually opened a bottle of wine, and during it, he drank 2/3 of it.
Wow.
Yeah, no. Yeah, we just fended for ourselves for dinner that night. Just not worth it.
Thank God for alcohol.
Oh, Morweena, by the way, in case you haven't had any Russell Brewing.
No, I haven't had it in a while. They make a really good White Rabbit.
Yes, they make a very excellent craft lager too. I'm not terribly fond of lagers, and it's actually really quite good.
Do you know Pierce? Remember Pierce?
Yep.
Of course. Vaguely. Mariner Brewing now in Coquitlam.
Oh, okay.
He's been there as their head brewer since June.
Oh.
And how did that special brew go? The one that you
Hasn't
were.
happened yet. It got kind of COVIDly delayed.
Ah, damn.
Oh dear.
My damn Cougar beer. That's right. My band, my terrible all girl band, is getting its own beer. Compliments of Jason Armitage at Mariner Brewing. It hasn't happened yet, so.
We'll look forward to that.
Do you keep in touch with them? I see him every once in a while pop up on Facebook, but
yeah, every now and then I pop into Mariner and say hi to him, kind of thing. And he is whenever I have to go to a wedding, Jason's my +1.
Oh, good.
Well,
He's lovely.
You know, Jason, he's bubbly, he's fun, he loves weddings.
Yeah.
And he knows
he cleans up well.
He knows my cousin.
He's pretty. Yeah.
He's pretty.
Because my cousin is also a brewer, so if I take him to a wedding like I did this weekend last year, he knows other people there. So he has fun. It gets him out, right? So
that's
handy. And he's fun.
So
right?
for those of you that don't know, we went out for about 2 years.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. I have dated exactly 2 people in the SCA in the 21 years I've been in the SCA, which was Jason for 2 years, and then I met Chris, and that was it. I have the most boring romantic history. There is nothing sizzling about my history, I'm afraid. But yeah.
That's okay. I've only dated Curtis in the SCA.
I know. I got to spice things up a bit, but not yet.
Ah, don't get rid of a good thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
See? Don't say it.
Well, then you kind of
no. I think
I'm not volunteering.
Nose, right?
I'm not volunteering as tribute. I have a crush on Kiva, but I'm not volunteering.
Oh.
Oh, it's awesome. Oh. You and Jason kind of have matching hair.
Oh yeah,
that's true. You do.
I remember that Clinton. I first saw him coming towards me with the golden curly hair, and he had just this what's the guy from the Three Musketeers? The young guy, D'Artagnan. He's like D'Artagnan-esque.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I'm gonna get me some of that, and I did.
Traps.
Pardon me?
We used to call mirrors Pierce traps.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever needed to stop Pierce for a second, flash a hand mirror at him, he'd stop dead.
All mirrors Pierce.
Can I tell you a story about Pierce that they had this thing on the CBC that was call in with your most favorite present story, and I almost called in and I thought I can't do this to him, but I'm going to do it to him now. So the